That's funny. And I don't think we have to do anything to turn these on.
Oh. Mike doesn't have his magenta on.
I missed that memo.
Have to get you the appropriate tie next time.
Right.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. It is Monday, March 8th, and 1 o'clock workshop. Thank you all for being here today. We have a few things that we will be doing today. We have increased operational efficiency and effectiveness, which we already see people sitting, waiting. We have our workshop topics, and then we have agenda review, followed by, and then we have good of the order, and of course adjournment. I know Ms. Gittens asked if she could have a moment before we got started to say something or do something. So Ms. Gittens?
Good afternoon, everyone. Am I on? Hello? Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello?
Leon.
Okay. So first of all, I just wanted to say Happy Women's Day to everyone. And I took part in a presentation at Harns Marsh Middle this morning. And I will read the card. It says, "You can't spell hero without her." Happy International Women's Day. And this is from the Harns Marsh administration team. And I do have a card and flowers for each of the board members.
Oh, very nice.
So you guys can pick out one that you like. Don't fight over the colors, but I'll leave it here and give you a card afterwards. Sorry, I don't have flowers for everybody, but happy International Women's Day, everybody.
Thank you, Gwen.
Madam Chair, may I ask for a
yes.
change in the order on the agenda?
Go ahead, please, Ms. Patrica.
Can we move C to the beginning of the meeting? I have a hard stop of 4 o'clock, and you know sometimes these meetings go a little bit long. I can always watch the presentation for items 1 through 3 under B, but I'd like to fully participate in C, and I fear that if it's at the end of the meeting, I will not be given the opportunity to fully participate.
Okay. May I have a consensus on moving the good of the order to the beginning? Could you raise your hand by saying aye?
So, I'm sorry, make sure, we're moving what to what?
The good of the order to the beginning so that everybody can participate, so that people are not leaving.
Well, I have a question. How does it affect the people that are already set up here?
I did ask Dr. Atkins that question earlier today, and he indicated that, Dr. Atkins, I don't want to answer for you.
Dr. Atkins? Thank you, Ms. Vaughn.
Well, I mean, we serve at the pleasure of the board, so whatever you'd like to do.
Well, why don't we do it after this presentation?
What is the
Okay,
good
can
of the
we,
order?
yes.
Can we know that?
So would you consider doing it after the presentation, before the, before our workshop? Would that
To
be
be
okay for everybody?
respectful to these people that are already ready to go and
Yes.
set
Would
up.
that be, everybody okay with that? Okay, thank you. Thank you. So if you will, Dr. Atkins, if they, we'll go ahead and start then.
Okay, we will go ahead and start this presentation. This is, of course, again, continuing on our update regarding the strategic plan, Objective 8. This time I'd like to turn it over to Ms. McClung, who will introduce the rest of our speakers after a short introduction.
Great, thank you.
Dr. Atkins. Good afternoon, board members. Nice to be here with you again to continue discussing our strategic plan and Vision 2030. Today, we will begin Objective 5, which is increasing operational efficiency and effectiveness. This goes across divisions, and it contains multiple goals related to efficiency and effectiveness. Today you'll hear part one, which will include the divisions of business services, human resources, and information systems. As we began working on Envision 2030 and trying to pinpoint operational efficiency and effectiveness, we decided to focus on our key work processes within each division. So each division came up with a list of what were those processes that really were critical to the work that they do within their division. And then they set standards around the measures of those processes. So when we looked at our objective for this overall objective, we decided to look at all of those process measures and measure the percentage of those that were on track or were meeting the standard that had been set. So this is a little different than some of the other objectives that you've heard about. When we looked at them last year, our goal was to increase the percentage of targeted key process measures that meet or exceed those standards to at least 80%. And last year we were at 76.2%. So we're working toward increasing those as we go along. As I said, today you're going to hear about some specific ones from 3 of our divisions. And to start us off, we have Dr. Desamore and her business services team.
Right, thank you.
Good. Good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Atkins, and members of the board. I'm excited to be able to speak with you today about business services and the part that we play in helping the district meet the overall goal in Objective 5, which is increasing operational efficiency and effectiveness. As you see here, I have several people with me today to help highlight the work going on in business services. The board doesn't always see the people I have with me today, and they are always working very hard to produce results for our division, our district, and our students. So I'm excited that they're able to display today some of the things that we've been so hard at work on. You'll hear major themes in the work that we've done centered around increased use of technology and increased student and community reach. And each department will expound on that, in addition to how the work that we do integrates with and supports the superintendent's Big 5. So we'll start with our financial accounting department.
Good afternoon, Dr. Atkins and members of the board. My name is Mike Gatewood. I'm the Director of Financial Services. I want to talk about some of the projects that we do on finance. Our main work process is the processing of invoices and payments to our vendors, as well as processing the travel and expense reports to our employees through the finance department. Our standard that we're working on is we're trying to keep the average number of days that we pay invoices within the optimal range of 24 to 26 days. And we're continuously working on improving our processes by looking at automation. We've been working to get most of our invoices sent to us electronically. There's been a lot of issues with the U.S. Postal Mail delaying things. So we've been trying to get vendors to send us the invoices electronically so that we know they're here. And it's a lot easier when we receive the invoices electronically. When employees were working remotely, both from district employees and school locations, once we had the invoice electronically, it was a lot easier to communicate with the schools and departments to get invoices paid on time. Here's one of our goals. Our goal is to have the average number of days to process vendor invoices. We're looking to be in the 24 to 26 day range to pay vendor invoices. Our invoices are normally due on a net 30 days, so the payment is due within 30 days of when we receive the goods or services. If you pay the invoices too soon, a couple months ago we met with John Grady and David Jang, our investment advisors. If we pay our invoices too soon, we miss out on some of the interest that we could earn from our investments. If we pay our invoices too late, our vendors are unhappy with us. So we try to stay in the 24 to 26 day range so that we can maximize investment income while still paying our invoices within the 30 days that they're due.
Thank you. Good
Good afternoon, board members and Dr. Atkins. I'm Susan Millay, and I'm the Executive Director of Business Services, and Payroll is one of the departments that I oversee. Mrs. Kimberly Hutchins is homesick today and not able to be with us. She regrets that. She was anxious to be able to present to you on behalf of our payroll team. So as you all know, payroll plays a critical function in satisfying staff members in receiving timely and accurate pay. And so their key focus is delivery of timely and accurate paychecks. And one of the things that can deviate sometimes is when we have special requests for paychecks or to be out of cycle. So we're going to talk about that a little bit and why that's an important goal for us and how we align our processes with this goal. So next slide. The percentage of manual checks that are produced by the payroll department, we try to automate every single thing that we do. However, sometimes there are pays that basically payroll receives information late, whether that was because the employee filed their overtime or supplemental pay late, or an administrator was unable to approve it, or it wasn't ponied, or it wasn't electronic mailed. Those are some of the things that prevent us from having 100% of what we call regular automated pay. So we carefully monitor those processes, and we are working with everyone in the district to make sure that we are all aware of cutoff deadlines and for receiving information related to extra pay or, for example, a new hire's pay. So if somebody starts after the cutoff or we didn't receive the information until after the cutoff, payroll will make a one-time manual off-cycle check. So monitoring those, there's always an opportunity for error when we're doing things not in an automated and regular fashion. So we've increased our communication and advertising of cutoff dates and are reaching out to schools and departments to make sure everyone's aware of that. You can see that over the past couple of years we've made progress. So far we've had an anomaly year of extraordinarily awesome achievements, and we hope to keep up a great rate for that.
Good afternoon. My name is Tracy Adams. I'm the procurement coordinator, and I'm here representing procurement. So procurement has a goal of the timing of our solicitations to be minimalized. So right now our goal is to have that be less than 84 days. This has been an ongoing department improvement goal for our department, and we have been on track with that. And it looks like we are going to exceed that, or meet or exceed that goal again for this year, 2021.
Next, we're going to talk a little bit about the challenges and triumphs out of some of the departments that report through procurement. Wow, what a year it's been. I think one of the things that you're going to hear in today's presentations from all departments and divisions is the collaboration across, and there's nothing more that illustrates that than PPE, right? Those three dreaded letters. So from sourcing and identifying where those items could be obtained, the budget department really stepped up and helped manage that. Jeannie Beatson was amazing in assisting with helping procurement find vendors, and Dr. Desimore's office was filled with all kinds of products all summer long as we checked out the little screen dividers, including the ones that you have. They come in all shapes and sizes and materials. And the district warehouse was responsible for ordering, receiving, and figuring out how to get all that material to the schools. Some of that material included materials from printing services. Our printing services department stepped up and printed all those signs that you see that say, please wear your mask, stay 6 feet apart, etc. It was the fastest and cheapest way for us to get that, and then there was a handoff to the mailroom, who then delivered the materials to the schools. In addition, the schools themselves sometimes, right towards the end, that last couple of days before the start of school, They would send staff over to pick up materials because we were receiving them right up until the day that school started. And on August 31st, we were very proud that all of our schools had the cleaning supplies, masks, gloves, gowns, face shields, and hand sanitizer and dispensers at so many places throughout the district, and it was an extraordinary challenge and triumph for all of the departments involved.
I'm also going to talk about the vendor diversity program. So I believe that you, as the board, were briefed recently by Mr. Williams and Mr. Holloway about this, this goal, and I just want to say that this goal is under procurement. It's important to increase our MWBE participation, which is why it's under procurement, and so I'm sure that they are still making progress with that. Also, I'm going to talk a little bit about our marketplace and our digital contract execution. So recently, and a huge shout out to Trey Davis and his team for finding a platform called Marketplace. This is similar to Amazon, where the bookkeeper will put in an item that he or she is to purchase, and there is a price checker that actually goes out and it looks at all the items like that type on our current bids, and it does a price checker for them. So it makes it a lot easier for the bookkeepers to make their purchases, and we're really excited that we have implemented that. And again, that falls under procurement, and so the next thing that I am talking about is the digital contract execution. So during the pandemic, we had to continue business as usual, whether we were working remote from home or if we were in the office. So with the help of our legal department and the superintendent's office, we started using a contract execution program that is similar to DocuSign, which most people are familiar with, and this is called Adobe Sign. It's a very easy process in that you would route it. It routes automatically. So once that the vendor signs it, it routes to the next person automatically, and then anybody that's copied on that contract gets a copy of it. So that eliminates the paper. Typically, we would have to print 3 copies, and some of these contracts, as you know, can be 100 pages. So we're saving paper in that manner. And we're really excited about using that new process. The other thing that I'm going to talk about is bonfire. Is that on the next slide?
No, but go ahead, keep it.
Okay, so I do want to talk about one more thing. Again, with the help of Trey Davis's team, specifically April Merzacco, they found us a really great platform to use for our solicitations. So it's called Bonfire. It's the way that we can advertise and reach out to our vendors. It's fully electronic so that the vendors can submit their proposals electronically. It also has a scoring component to it. So just for example, it's a very intelligent program. It even tells us how many sheets of paper that have been submitted. We started this it's been 5 months ago, September 25th, 2020 is the first one that we rolled out. In 5 months, we have saved the vendors 805,000 sheets of paper, not including what we have saved the district, because typically we would have to print out the scoring sheets for, let's say, 6-7 people on a committee. That could be 10 sheets per committee member times 2 meetings. So you do the math. I mean, we're saving a lot of money, and we're saving a lot more, for not just for the district, but for the vendors also. We've got a lot of really good feedback, and that they like this program, and yeah, that's just something else that we're really excited that we have rolled out. And that's it.
Okay, next we're going to jump ahead a slide to chat about payroll a little bit. So, again, what a year it was. Back in March, when the governor just declared the pandemic emergency, the federal government at the same time changed some laws about pay and how we roll that out. So the payroll department had to move fast on their feet. They worked very closely with our colleagues in HR, in particular compensation and labor relations, to make sure that the new processes that we had for evaluating eligibility for different types of leave and paying that. And so, you think about typically when you adapt a new law and roll it out, it takes a lot of time to test and execute and so forth. I think within 5 weeks of the law being published, we had our first payroll that had to be processed using brand-new laws that had never been in the system before. So again, we worked with our colleagues in IT to get updates in PeopleSoft, so you can see that our challenges and triumphs are not ours alone in the division, but across the district and great deal of collaboration. Recently, very recently, February 26th was a milestone date for payroll, as they had salary updates for basically just about every person in the district, according to different pay scales, different rates, different bonus amounts, eligibility, and on February 26th successfully rolled out pay increases retroactive in some cases, bonuses in some cases, a lot of tedious and laborious work, so we're very proud of rolling out all of those changes. And the only lesson learned, wishful thinking, if I could have something that could help us save time, and I know this is not just for the ears here, but also for our bargaining units. If we had the magic idea of establishing pay increases on July 1st and not having to go backwards in retro pay and so forth, that would be just simply amazing. I know it's wishful thinking, but I'm just putting it out there. And finally, all those payroll records that we have to keep for a long time, we are automating the filing and records retention using the Laserfish file cabinet, which we've been highly effective in using in other departments within the district and have embraced that and are well underway to filing our pay records that can be retrieved online instead of retrieving from a warehouse.
Okay, I'm going to talk about some of the challenges and triumphs for the Property and Records Department, the Internal Audit Department, and Financial Accounting Department. The Property and Records Department, during the entire pandemic, when a lot of people were working from home, that department was here working in the office. The nature of their work, they really couldn't take the student records home with them, so we had them here scanning and processing things the whole time. What's been a challenge is, with many other districts across the country still closed down, we've been working to expedite the way we distribute student records. So instead of mailing them or mailing discs, what we're doing now is we're scanning them and we're emailing them to other districts so that they can get them much faster, and it also goes right to those employees in case those employees are not working from an office, they're working from home. It doesn't get mailed to their school district, it gets sent to their email file. For the Internal Auditing Department, we're working on a conversion. We're getting away from Manatee, and we're trying to convert their internal funds to PeopleSoft along with the rest of the district. We've been working on this for a couple months now, and it's going to be, hopefully by June, July, we'll be able to start implementing some of these processes. We also, with the pandemic, we also started with My School Bucks, which is an online processing. So with internal funds, a lot of money is raised there at the school. Even before the pandemic, parents were starting to use a lot more credit cards and things like that. So now we're starting with the My School Bucks so that parents can pay for their stuff online for their students, or people can make donations to the school online. It's the same software platform that we use for food service for when parents are making payments for the a la carte items in the cafeteria. For the Financial Accounting Department, we were looking at some of our outstanding checks that have not been cashed. We saw a big correlation with the number of checks for travel and expense that employees were not cashing, so we had a lot of those outstanding. And what we did is we worked with the ERP department to implement direct deposit of travel and expense reports for employees. It's based off of your primary payroll account. So whenever you have a travel and expense payment, it gets directly deposited to your account just like your payroll check. We're hoping in the future to be able to use some of the knowledge we learned from this implementation to start implementing where we pay other charter schools and other suppliers by ACH, which will help us with some of the mailing costs as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. afternoon. Of course, you all know me. I'm Kelly Letcher, Director of Budget. A couple of challenges and triumphs that the Budget Department is coming up against, and I mean, most everybody knows our challenges. It's trying to make the buck go as far as we can, and we know it's going to be less this next year than what we've had this year, and just trying to make sure we keep our resources in our schools where we really need them the most. The PPE and acquisition and distribution, as Susan was saying, we all have worked hard on this one to make sure that our schools have everything they need. We have made sure that the money is in the right place so they can place the orders and we can track the items so that we can try and get some kind of reimbursement if possible for them. And Jeannie, as she was saying, has been amazing making sure that schools have everything they need. She's in constant contact with them, increasing their items, making changes, doing whatever she needs to. She's been wonderful in that process. The sales tax is another great thing. We're coming up on our 2-year anniversary of our sales tax. And one of the things that we have found that is missing is the education of our public, understanding how we're using our dollars, making sure they understand that we're really utilizing these funds in the best way. And so we're working with the ISOC committee and communications to come up with an education campaign so that we can make sure that the public knows what we're doing with those dollars. Excuse me. The next thing is the CARES Act funding, and we have come and spoke with you all about the CARES Act funding. It's a lot of money. We're very happy to have it. Looking forward to the next round of dollars as well, and hoping we get some information soon. But along with getting those dollars, there's many challenges that comes with that. Trying to make sure that we're utilizing it appropriately. We have worked really hard with academic services to make sure that we're using it to make sure that we're getting that learning loss from students, that they are focusing on that. And the mental part of the students with being gone for COVID, and those are the 2 areas that we're mainly focused with that. And then the last thing I want to talk about is our student allocation alignment. So, you know, with the dollars having to be stretched, we want to make sure allocations to the schools are as flat as we can. We don't want to see a loss happen to them, so we're trying to make sure we're pushing things out there. One of the things that I am really proud about with working with operations and student enrollment and stuff, we made sure we changed the process with the batch. What was happening before is we were giving the allocations to the schools, the batch would run, and then there would be a recruitment fair. Well, the schools did not really know how many teachers they had because the batch ran afterwards. We were trying to make adjustments and they were trying to hurry up and recruit. So we changed that process so that the batch runs, the resources go to the schools, and then the recruitment fair. It just lines up a lot better to help our schools know what they're really looking for when they have hit that recruitment fair. So those are the things that we're working on in the budget department.
Good afternoon. My name is Candy Messenger. I am the Director of Food Service, Food and Nutrition Services, sorry. Still get used to the title. There's several things that I would like to speak to. Over the last 3 years, including this year, we've had an increase of breakfast participation. And that this year with the pandemic, there was a lot of hurdles that we needed to jump over. So what has benefited this year is classroom feeding and bringing the food out to the students as they arrive to the school, so they can pick up their breakfast as they arrive and consume their breakfast wherever they are required to be. Under quarantine, to date, we have, Food and Nutrition Services have covered 23 sites, kitchen sites, with staff that those kitchens were closed for quarantine, so we had less than 24 hours to gather another staff to go in and to feed the students. The staff that I call them our relief teams, they go in. Some of these people don't have an idea of what's happening in the schools, if there's extra programs going on, or what type of feeding model they use. So the ultimate goal is to feed the students. And that was what I kept telling the relief teams. Just feed the students, we'll figure out everything else on the other side. So the staff
has been wonderful. When we call and say, hey, we need your help at XYZ school, they will go and help. Flexibility for serving the students. As you know, at the beginning of the year, we went through different feeding models, different scenarios of where to feed the students. And each time the staff, without hesitation, went through and made the changes needed to feed the students safely. We fed the students curbside, which is our Lee Home Connect students and our virtual students. We did classroom feeding. We're doing kiosks that are set up throughout the schools. And in some cases, the feeding model changed and the food service staff has adapted to those changes. By the end of January, to the end of January, we have fed over 4 million meals to the students from the start of the school year. So that in itself is phenomenal. And I attribute all of that to the staff that's working out in the schools. So it was very important that our students felt welcomed coming in because of the unknown. So these are some happy pictures that I want to share with you. We make sure that we're as personal as we can be and keeping the students safe. And as you see in these pictures, I have a very passionate staff. They like to get involved in the different holidays and just be there and keep the students entertained while being safe. We are progressive. As you know, we've had to change how we've done things, and right along, again, I attribute all of that to the staff that I have working for me. And the agility and service, they have been at the bus loops, they've been at the car rider lines, they've gone out in the community. They do a phenomenal job. Then we get these thank you notes, and these are a blessing to us from the students, and these are just a couple. We get many, many things from the students, pictures and thank you cards. And again, trying to keep it as normal as possible, we continue to run contests where students can interact and be as normal as we can in the situation that we're in. Then I'm happy to say that this is Sheila Colin. She is a food and nutrition service manager at Colonial Elementary. She was selected to be the face for Tyson Foods in an advertisement in this magazine.
Oh, wow.
This is a national magazine that is for the food service workers, anyone in the industry. So she was selected out of however many applications to be the face of Tyson for this ad. And then I would invite you to follow us on our Facebook page. It's the Food and Nutrition Services. You'll see pictures like I've shared and other stories that are linked to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Council.
Thank you so much for allowing us to share some information with you today. Not only did we want to make sure that you heard about our progress as it relates to those indicators that we have in the strategic plan, but also knowing and understanding, some of the challenges that we face throughout the year in terms of some of the situations that we've been going through with COVID and everything, and knowing that out of necessity comes solution. And so there are many new things that have been implemented, some of which will continue because it has created some efficiencies for us. So there is some positive to be gained out of that. And knowing that with all of the powerhouse people that I had with me today and telling you the stories of everything that's been going on, I show so much appreciation to them for all of the work that they're doing each day to continue to push the divisions the division's goals forward and continue then to contribute to the overall mission of the district in terms of making sure that we are creating that world-class school system for all of our students and helping them to realize their highest personal potential. So I turn it over for any questions that you may have before I think I call up our human resources colleagues I think are next.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Vaughn, please.
Yes. Thanks, Amy. I have two questions. One is for payroll. I know that some school districts, I'm not sure what, in Florida, but I know in Texas, many of the school districts would pay the employees year-round instead of like Lee County gives the big check at the end of the school year. And I'm sure that there's some problems with that. The gentleman who was talking about paying the invoices at just the right time talked about keeping money in-house. I know interest rates aren't very good, but keeping, well.
Get what we got.
Yeah, well, yeah, I take my 3 cents a month from my checking account.
Yes.
Literally 3 cents. So I just wanted to hear the rationales, the pros and cons of keeping that money a little bit longer and paying people all summer versus the big check the way we do it.
Great. Be happy to answer that question for you. So a couple of years ago, when we moved to pay in arrears, we had to adjust our schedule because we had been paying right up until the day you worked, and then we went to pay in arrears, which is where you receive your pay for the prior 2 weeks' works or half a month worked. And so when we did that, we adopted something that is still in place today, and that is for those staff that do not work over the summer, they have the option to either receive a lump sum check or to continue to receive payments over the summer. So we've gone back and forth on what is the level of effort to do that, what is the benefit to the staff, and each time that we've done that, we've determined that we would continue offering that option so that those who really find that they need to have that income over the summer, they have less income during the year. But if that is, we have heard that that is really something that matters to a lot of people, so we continue to give the flexibility to the staff to make their decision to either choose to receive a lump sum payment at the end of the school year or to continue to receive paychecks over the summer.
But if, and I guess part of that, and that's a good thing, because I remember toward the end of the year when I was working as a teacher, the principal secretary would always say, now remember, you're not, anyway. How would we be saving a significant amount if we just mandated that everybody's going to get paychecks monthly, the way it's done during the school year?
So we receive paychecks twice a month.
Twice a month, right.
And so if you think about it, if we were to force people to receive summer pay when they're not certain they're going to be here over the summer, so, that's one thing is you're not certain that, or if you have a summer job, you might be supplementing your income. So if we were to pay it all out front, payroll runs about $25 million per pay period, so putting that all out front reduces the opportunity for investment on those funds. But we really have, as we've put our finger on the pulse of what do people want, and there's a great divide, and so satisfying staff with giving them the option, we have thought that is the right thing to do.
Oh, okay, and that's basically, I wanted the rationale. And the other question was for food and nutrition. First of all, kudos for your wonderful staff. I loved your pictures. I'm just curious, with the kids being able to eat in various places in the schools, what kind of protocols did the schools have to put in place to deal with the garbage from the food, which would smell by the end of the day or attract rodents, bugs, that sort of thing?
The trash is removed after each meal service, so it's not collected in the room for a long period of time or at the areas. It's picked up throughout the day, so there's, I haven't heard of any issues.
Okay, because I was wondering if there's a particular receptacle for the teacher, not his or her wastebasket, but a receptacle where the food goes, and that's picked up. I know the worst thing when I was teaching was if some kid put in banana peels or orange peels or something, I'm like, no, out in the big trash cans.
When the meals are delivered, there's also a large trash bag.
Okay.
For them to deposit their trash.
Okay, so they do have that. I figured you had something in place, but I was just curious what that might be. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Ms. Patrica?
So you are an illustration of what I have been struggling with, particularly as of late when I get back out to schools, which is how to show our appreciation as a leadership team for the work that you guys have done, the amazing ability to change and react to circumstances in a very professional, very appropriate, very timely way, while at the same time in your own personal lives dealing with the struggles of COVID yourself. I don't know how to thank you for that other than to say thank you publicly. We're not a private corporation that has the ability to give you each a giant bonus to show our appreciation. So all I really have to give you are my words, which are thank you. And I believe food service, I'm sorry, I'm terrible with names. Please tell me your name.
It's Candace.
Candy.
Candy, I think you've presented to boards before because your pictures put a lump in my throat and emotion is the way to get to us, right? So good job there.
Thank you.
Although I remember in the early days of the shutdown, the work that your employees did and really putting themselves out there. So that was awesome. I do have two questions. The MWBEs that we talked about 2 weeks ago, it's the first time I think I've felt, and there wasn't a lot of discussion at the board table, it's the first time I felt all 8 members of the leadership team being really on the same page and really excited about moving forward. That being said, I was left with the impression that we cannot offer preferences for MWBEs until this disparity report is completed. So I just get a little bit concerned about the legality of us seeking to increase those in any official written down goal kind of way without the disparity report being completed. And I could be wrong. That my understanding of the law on that could be wrong, but that was the impression I got.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. We weren't trying to communicate anything different here. I think what we're talking about is, first of all, our vendor outreach, being able to increase that and make sure that our efforts are far-reaching so that the vendor pool that we're working within is more reflective of the community that we work in. That's one, without necessarily any goal behind that other than we want to make sure that we're reaching all of the vendors we can. It's good for business and it's good for the community. And then second, starting as Mr. Williams and Mr. Holloway kind of outlined, working with them to start with really is a small business initiative, and then completing the disparity study, and then based on the results of the disparity study, seeing where that takes us. So we did not communicate anything different than that.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
And I'll add one more thing to that, and that is the collection of data. So in order to know how many vendors that we are currently doing business with, we are, modifying our forms, ensuring that those boxes are checked. One of the things we had the option to select, which minority business you might be, but we didn't have one that said none. So we're making sure that every application that comes forward, we're going to put that box on there to make sure that it isn't missed. If it's not filled in, the answer none is the other option if you're not a minority business.
Excellent, thank you. That clarifies that. My second question is for the My School Bucks thing. Does that mean that I don't have to write checks for T-shirts or field trips or yearbooks or any of that anymore?
Once it is fully established, that is what that would mean, yes, that everything that a school might be collecting money for, a parent, guardian, or whomever would have the ability to be able to submit those payments online once that is fully implemented. We are just in kind of our infant stages here, but that is where we would like to take it.
That is the the best news I've heard all day. Because writing those checks and filling out those forms has become my new beginning of the school year forms. It drives
Okay.
me crazy.
Right, right. Because who has checks anymore, right?
Sorry?
Who has checks anymore? Sometimes, like when you get to writing that last one, then you're like, oh man, I actually have to order some more. If it's one thing, I still write a check for or whatever. So I feel you on that.
Thank you for that. That's huge from a customer service perspective. That makes me really excited. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gittens?
Yes, first of all, thank you guys. That was a great presentation. It was very succinct. It was thorough and just enough. So thank you so much for that. It was very, very good. Bonfire, was that Mike or who was?
That was Tracy that spoke of bonfire. That's in
I
procurement.
can address
Okay,
those
all right.
questions.
That, I think, and I've mentioned this before from the dais, but I think it's a really good thing that if we take a few minutes in one of the workshops to just show the board members how to reach that. You do have to go on, I have done it, and you have to, make an account or whatever. And the good part about it is that you can see all the things that are going on as far as building and as far as what, details and all that go to the architects and the GCs, and it's a good thing. But I know I don't know how to use it properly, but I think just to take a, 10 to 15 minute period and someone get on the computer and show us how to do it would be helpful, and it may help have fewer questions because we can find it ourselves. Let's see. Okay, and with Candy, you're the popular one today, I think. You talk about food and everybody's like, So, thank you for all that you guys do. And the question I have, you talked about the relief team. And I know in some of the schools right now, we have a plethora of people out at one time. Where do you get this relief team from? And do we have people that are maybe retired from food service or that know about it that we can call on, or is that something we can do?
These are current employees and assistant managers that we have in schools. So we're taking from various schools to make these relief teams. And, they last for days, a week and a half to 2 weeks.
So we're playing Robin Hood here.
Yes. But
Okay.
it's been working, and we do our best to get in travelers. We have travelers, so we try to utilize most of them in these relief teams, so it's not affecting the schools.
Just, my crazy out-of-the-box thinking, but maybe some partnership with some food service industries or whatever. Hopefully, we don't have to go through this much longer. But if we should kind of have them maybe as a backup, some people that do have some knowledge of food service and the necessity for the cleanliness and the, the rules and regulations. I know we have the culinary, teams in some schools, and maybe they could help with that. Just a thought, so.
Thank you.
And the name of the lady that got the award, I didn't get that down.
Sheila Colon,
Can you spell her last name?
C-O-L-O-N.
Oh, Cologne, okay.
She's from Colonial Elementary.
Okay, she will get a little card. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we have celebrities.
Yes, yes. And she's very photogenic, I must say. Thank you so much, you guys.
Okay, Ms. Morgan? Thank you, Ms. Gittens.
Well, first of all, I have to say that this is the second time I've seen Tracy Adams present, and she does a really nice job. She presented to the construction advisory last week, and it was a really good meeting, and I was just really impressed at how she has taken over and leading that department, so I wanted to make that comment.
Thank you.
I also want to appreciate your stress on the fact that collaboration has been key to your success. I think it's great to see one department acknowledge another. Couple of questions. Payroll. When somebody said pony, the hackles on my, we're transmitting personnel stuff for payroll by pony, that we still are transcribing stuff from paper and not, everything is not electronic,
Yes, that is the case. Everything is not electronic yet. We still have things that come through for like overtime payments that are not yet electronic, although that is our initiative ongoing right now to try to implement that. I don't know if there's anything else, Susan, that you want to say to that, but we do realize the limitations and the concerns with that, and we are working in the process now of trying to eliminate all the pieces that are still not electronic.
It seems to me that even though they are small in number, the impact on staffing at the school and at the department, it would have a significant effect on them, and that it would be well worth, if there's a cost associated with it, knowing what the cost is and, whether there isn't a significant return on investment for improving that. I missed.
Agreed.
I could add just one more thing to that, and that is that we are expanding as we roll out new projects. We for the electronic personnel action form, we tackled the biggest first, the new hires and rehires, and so instead of rolling out every single thing all at once, we implemented the pilot. We're continuing with adding functionality to that. So everything is on the agenda for automation in terms of PAF, personnel action forms, and overtimes. Those projects are all in the works.
Great, thank you. And that's a perfect segue to my second question. I can't remember what process you're migrating to PeopleSoft from another standalone program, but
that's our internal funds. Currently, it uses another program called Manatee, and we're now going to switch that over into PeopleSoft.
Yeah, I'm just glad to hear that. We have such an incredible investment in that thing, and it's just nice to see that we continue to have opportunities to migrate stuff from other providers to that. Sales tax. Did we ever put up funding by school signs showing what we have done and what we plan to do with sales tax money? I know we talked about that when we were selling the sales tax, but do we still have signs that say or show, like, these bar charts? This is what we were going to spend at Manatee, and this is what we've spent, and this is what, whatever. Just throwing that.
Not necessarily a sign that looks like that, what you described, but what the sign will say is that there is an ongoing project here, right? At a school where they put up the sign and it'll say, sales tax, your tax dollars at work here for, a maintenance project or technology or what have you. So there's not necessarily a graph, but it is advertising the fact that it's happening.
Good. Let's see, what else do I have? That's it. I mean, I will simply say what everybody else had said. It's nice to have an opportunity to hear from a department that has also had to do an extraordinary amount of pivoting, overtime, whatever, in response to this whole past year. And so it's nice to hear what you all are doing and to be able to say thank you for everything that you've accomplished this year, and the fact that you continue to make new things happen despite everything else going on. So grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you. We will make sure to pass those sentiments on to all staff, and hopefully they take a minute to tune in and watch this when they can, because it really, the kudos really does belong to them. All of these people that you see seated here and all their staffs that work with them have really been hitting it hard in the face of all of this to try to make sure that all of these things are happening. So I really do appreciate that. Kudos, and they need to hear that.
Okay, Ms. Morgan?
Oh, thank you. I am done.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Fisher, did you have any?
No, I really didn't have any questions, except I just wanted to ask for an update on the disparity report timeline. Can you refresh my memory about that? Because are we anticipating? it's going to take?
Not sure that we have an anticipated timeline just yet, because one of the things that we have to make sure of is we know when they come in to do a disparity study, there's going to be certain information that they're asking for.
Right.
And so our next steps are to make sure with legal that we've lined up all of that information that we believe we're going to need, and then collect that information over a period of time that the disparity study is going to ask for. So I'm not completely sure that we've solidified that timeline just yet.
Right, so, and that's what I thought, because I think Mr. Williams mentioned that, and so how are you guys involved in identifying those things that you think they're going to be looking for, or do you?
How are we involved in that? You're saying in business services? Go ahead.
So in procurement, anytime we engage with vendors, there's a vendor registration form. And so once in the past 2 years, we've gone out and asked vendors to complete the form and make sure they update it with their status. Is their firm veteran-owned, woman-owned, minority-owned, disadvantaged-owned, et cetera. So we are the collection point when vendors engage with us. So gathering the information at the point of engagement is where the procurement team comes in.
Great, thank you. And then I just wanted to say the presentation was great. I really appreciate the mention of other departments and the collaboration and cooperation that has kept things moving. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Giovanelli, I know that you just joined us. Did you have any questions? Okay. And I just have a couple, and I do want to apologize to HR and Information Systems. I know that we're running over a little bit, but this is really good conversation. Susan, I think with the PPE, are the allocations from the schools, I know certain schools utilize more than others because of just the situation at hand. Are we making sure that we are providing the needs for those schools who have that extra needs?
Yes. So Jeannie Beatson, third time name drop Jeannie, right? She has her finger on the pulse with a Google sheet that tracks who's got what they need, who has too much, who has too little. So at first, we actually found that there were some schools that had a little too much. They weren't going through some of the product as fast as we had anticipated. Dr. Desmore came up with the model for, based on the student allocation and staff allocation from the budget department, working with Ms. Letcher, identifying what we thought going into the school year we might need, having never done this before, and then fine-tuning. Jeannie's led the process to fine-tune, monitoring what do they need, changing shipments and deliveries. You know, we are delivering less frequently now, and so that's all coming together to make sure it's kind of an on-demand delivery.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking is because lately the schools that I have been visiting were saying that they were short of certain things, so, and I can definitely share that information.
At any point, if you hear that, the only thing is just let them know, reach out to us, Jeannie Beatson, and whatever it is that they're saying they need, we'll get it to them.
No, I appreciate that. And then I'd be more than happy to be on your relief team. Anytime you need me, call me. I just think, because food is definitely, you know, dear and near to my heart as well. And I just think that every presentation was great, and I really appreciate all the hard work. And then, Candy, if you can, whenever, if you have opportunity, can you just maybe put it in our update or whatever? I just want to know how many kids we're feeding, like, their second meal, you know, to go home, the kids that do not have that food if we're not providing it for them. Because I think that's something that, you know, the community does need to understand, that we do that for our children. Okay? Thank you so much. I appreciate Ms. Gittens?
I have one that I forgot
over
to.
for them.
Okay.
Please. Go ahead.
It's very quick. It is, I know we were feeding a lot of Home Connect students. Are we still doing that a lot? Or what, I know a lot of them have come back, but are we still doing that program?
We are still feeding curbside, but as the students are coming back, we're seeing that number drop. So we're monitoring all of those sites.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all very, very much. Appreciate it. Oh,
And as we wrap up, I want to give a special shout out to Cindy McClung, who is herding cats all the time, trying to get us all together with the strategic plan briefing. Thank you, Cindy,
That's
for
right.
putting up with us. We
Thank you,
appreciate your
Cindy.
leadership.
appreciate that.
All right, I think our HR friends are up next.
Thank you. Dr. Pruitt, apologize for the.
Oh,
the
no
delay.
worries. Good afternoon. Hopefully we'll make up time with me, since 2 weeks ago you really had the HR down and dirty, but We are also wanted to just re-highlight some of the pieces relative to human resources as it relates to this conversation today. First and foremost, you do know, based on 2 weeks ago, the departments that make up human resources. And as I shared with you, we have a set of key work processes. These are the processes that like we sort of live or die by. In other words, these are the key, we do a lot of other things, but these are the key work processes that allow us to do our work and move the organization forward. So for all of these areas, we have outcomes that we look for on a yearly basis. But, you know, that's not really, that's good information, but you also need to know in-process measures, because you don't want to get to the end of the year and then find out I'm way off of my target, and now a whole year's gone by and I haven't been able to address it. So the in-process measures are what allow us to keep track of that on a month-by-month basis. For FY20, relative to the conversation today, in looking at key processes and the measures, whether we're meeting or exceeding the standards, and our target was 80% or greater, and we were able to meet this particular with a 90%. And looking at the on-track measures versus the two that we're monitoring, you can, again, we reviewed these 2 weeks ago relative to all of these particular areas. I'm on the next slide there with the on-track measures. Yeah, there we go. And again, looking at these are the, well, I'll define those as the critically important areas relative to human resources. The two areas that were our in-process measures are currently of concern to us have to do with the percent of peer collaboration teachers participating in the monthly progress monitoring. It's a new process, and so as we're looking at that, we're continuing to refine how we're keeping on top of those. It's not, we're finding anecdotally that they're not doing it, it's that they're just not recording the progress monitoring. And relative to the market rate, that's, as you guys know, is directly related to the funding that we receive for the state. And so given the conditions and what happened this past year relative to where the bulk of the money had to go, we weren't able to meet that target relative to the percent of positions on market rate. So in looking kind of just spotlighting in human resources, again, our annual measures are, we look at the instructional openings on the first day of school, as you guys will recall, but the way that we monitor that is we're looking at, as we're going through now our recruitment season, looking at our connects to offers. And as I said before, it's a concern for me, looking at our in-process measures, looking at our recruitment events, looking at the number that we've signed versus last year. I'm just going to go on record as say it's a concern. So we're coming up with some ways that we're going to address that relative to if we do have, as we get closer into the summer and see that we have a lot of openings, we're going to come up with some ways that we're going to address that and come up with a district-wide comprehensive plan so that we have teachers in the classroom where there are students sitting in those particular classrooms. And again, we look at our conversions relative to our offers to hires. As you may recall, we started a couple years ago with connects, because the more people we connect with, the more offers we're able to make. And now we're looking at, we make the offers, if you don't come, why aren't you coming? And we're kind of tracking that particular data. And then another spotlight on providing and monitoring professional development, the annual outcomes, so you can see there, relative to the completion rate of the training, and then relative to if the people taking the training strongly agree that it is improving their work performance. And the way that we look at that in process is by looking month by month what our completion rates are, and then also again looking month by month how those surveys are filled out after the training. So if there's a particular training that we're offering repeatedly, then we'll use that data to sort of tweak it and make it a little better. Again, looking at the in-process measures so that we can make sure that we're on target for the actual annual outcome measure that we're looking at. Are there any questions?
Do we have any questions? Ms. Vaughn?
Yeah, I just have about the peer collaborative teachers, since there was something to examine. This is not exactly what's on that sheet, but I was wondering what approximately what percentage of the time are the peer collaborative teachers dealing one-on-one with teachers who may need particular help versus do they do more training, like group training, or?
It really
depends
is,
on the
it's
school?
really individualized, Ms. Vaughn, to the school, because, you know, they're all teaching at least 50% of the time.
Right.
So it really is based on, we do have in some schools where it's very focused. They may be working with one or two teachers that may be struggling versus other schools where we don't necessarily have somebody that we're like, oh my gosh, we're really worried about this teacher. So that is done in a more doing group trainings, offering the training, seeing if people can come, opening up their classrooms for model lessons and things like that. So it really is very prescriptive to the individual school.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Anyone else, please? Ms. Gittens?
Thank you for the presentation. Now, and it may be a little early to ask this, but as we are getting the opportunity for all teachers to get vaccinated, are we seeing any uptick in some of them wanting to come back?
Well, I don't have any correlation on that right now relative to how the employees feel about it. My only anecdotal is relative to the climate surveys and the comments, but again, that was back in November, so I'm not sure how we can correlate that. I will say to you that our employees are extremely grateful for the opportunities and the partnership that we have with the Department of Health and all the work that Ms. Stillwell and Ms. Whiff are doing, you know, with the Department of Health to keep that partnership in the forefront. Very, very grateful the employees are.
And also the, is it CVS and some of the other organizations, because, you know, they don't have the age limit, and I've heard from some teachers they're very excited about that.
I think that's, and Lauren could tell you better, but I think that's ever-changing and evolving, I think, relative to who can get the vaccine and how they can get it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pruitt, and thank you for the presentation.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you. Gentlemen? I see Mr. Davis is on here, but he's not here, so just Mr. Alton and Eldon.
All right, good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
So I wanted to first, mention that Mr. Davis, obviously couldn't be here and he sent his regards, but he also did want me to pass on that if you had any questions after our presentation that we couldn't resolve today, that he'd be happy to meet with you individually. So he wanted to make himself available.
Thank you, Mr. Alton.
Okay, so we're going to.
Can you move your microphone down a little tiny bit? Getting old. It's hard for me to hear. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so today we're going to talk about several of the initiatives that we have within the division, and we're going to be very, very brief around the goals for some of these because as you can guess, some of them are tied to our sales tax projects that are security related. But before I get into some of the discussion of the projects themselves, I just wanted to let you know that the projects that we don't really discuss in public that often are on schedule or ahead of schedule. And that was a big part of our goals for this year, was to make sure that we're accomplishing that. And we'll talk a little bit about how we are accomplishing that in a second. If we could step to the next slide, please. Okay, so what I did want to talk to you about in addition to those goals is obviously we've had a very interesting year. We had to do the COVID shuffle about almost exactly a year ago. And so that not only impacted our goals for the year, but it also impacted overall operations of the entire organization. And we had to be a big part of that. So as a division, we eat, sleep, and breathe operational efficiencies, and we had a new opportunity ahead of us because while there was a lot of panic a year ago about how the district or everyone outside these walls were going to operate, we saw some opportunities to start to really push forward some of the initiatives that we had already either begun implementation or had anticipated implementing anyway. And because those fit so nicely within what we were doing in order to try to improve our operations for COVID during that time, we were able to push forward not only the initiatives that we had underway with our capital projects, but some of the things that people don't necessarily see that happen behind the scenes that we wanted to accelerate. You know, our transition to remote instruction or remote work for the entire organization was a little bit of a challenge at first, right? First, we had to get through the initial, how are we going to function when people are outside of our walls, that kind of thing. But what we did is we doubled down on some of the technologies that we were already in the process of implementing. Collaboration tools, video instruction tools, things like that, and really accelerated that implementation. And what we hope to see from that is not only that we helped improve the operational efficiency of the organization during this time, but also that we learned from some of these exercises and that we continue to use these technologies moving forward in a way that helps us improve our overall efficiency and effectiveness of operations. Another implementation that we began that is going to become permanent is the elementary one-to-one program. During COVID, we had to make sure that people could work and could learn from home. And that challenge was greatest at elementary for a variety of reasons. You can imagine that we were concerned about making sure that we could bring the elementary schools up to the same level in using technology that we did with the secondary students. And from an infrastructure perspective, we were in a good position. But what we did not have at the time was we did not have a one-to-one program where elementary students took the devices home. So we improvised. And at the beginning of the school year, what we did is we kept some of our aging fleet of devices in service so that we could implement that for the COVID situation. But then we fast forward a few months and we found that a lot of the tools that had not previously been deeply adopted at the elementary level now are. And so what we've done with your support, I know that we've had a lot of discussions about this, but we are implementing the one-to-one formally for elementary students, and that'll be a continuing program. Again, we're hoping that we use the COVID situation as an opportunity for the organization to learn and grow, and now we're implementing these as permanent solutions that hopefully will gain us efficiencies in the future. The digital divide is very, very real in 2021. This is something that we knew we were going to have to deal with during the COVID situation. We knew that we had quite a few students that did not have internet at home in addition to having devices at home. But we also, we were a little bit shocked at how many employees did not have that technology at home as well. So we did implement programs, again, to help with that. And as that went along with the hotspot programs and things like that, we also identified through grant programs some opportunities to provide some perpetual assistance even as we start to roll out of the COVID era, hopefully next school year. We have worked with grant programs from T-Mobile to provide some equipment not only for students that may be homebound and that, but also to provide connectivity for students that don't have connectivity at home for homework, even as we move past the COVID era. We've modernized our collaboration tools in several areas. Some of you have seen a lot of that. If you've been on video calls, you've seen a lot of the tools that we're using in addition to Zoom, but Microsoft Teams and some other technologies. And again, as you've heard some of the other departments talk about having to digitize their processes, one of the things that we really wanted to accomplish there was to provide access to the tools, the information, files, everything that our employees and our students need, anywhere, anytime, in any device. And so we've continued along that because, again, this is going to be a huge benefit for us after the COVID era has moved on. We still anticipate to see huge benefits from these changes that we've been implementing already. Now, once we get to the capital projects, and this is what we think of as sales tax projects plus several other items, I'm really, really happy to say that we've been able to accelerate. While COVID has certainly created challenges in a lot of areas, one of the things it did for us is during the last quarter of last school year and then through the summer, it gave us some empty classrooms to work in. So what we did is we took the opportunity to accelerate some of the programs that we already had under implementation. And at the same time, we noticed that we had some of our contractors who were struggling to get work. Now, those contractors are struggling to get work because a lot of local businesses shut down. And those workers, you know, when you work in construction or anywhere where you're doing building modifications, a lot of people were getting laid off. So we took the opportunity to pick up some of that additional labor to accelerate some of our projects, which also helped out our contractors and hopefully help the community keep some people employed. And during that time, we were able to accelerate some of those security projects, as well as one that is actually a very important one, which is the implementation of a full district telephone system transition. And the reason that I point that one particular project out is because this project, we were in need of a new phone system district-wide anyway. But when the opportunity came to accelerate, we were able to reduce our operating costs for our phone bills for this fiscal year about 90% for the first 5 years of this implementation. We're going to see those costs, and then afterwards we're going to see about a 70% reduction in ongoing OpEx around our telephone services. So what started as a 3-year project quickly was moved to a 2-year project so that we could realize those savings now, because we had an uncertain future with tax revenue, and we really wanted to make sure that as we went into the next fiscal year, as some of the incentive funds dried up, that we were doing what we could to reduce as much operating expenditure as we could. And so that was one of the projects that we took on that we accelerated. And then, of course, a lot of teachers and students went home last year with smart boards in their classrooms and came back with Promethean panels and newer technologies in their classrooms. So I think that the COVID shutdown, so to speak, gave us a little bit of opportunity to get into those classrooms and do a lot more work than we would have under normal circumstances. So that's a lot for me to go through in just a couple of minutes, and I realize that we have approximately 12 minutes left, and I do have Gerald Eldon with me, so before I transition over to the next part of the presentation, which is around our focus implementation, I wanted to entertain any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for him? Ms. Patrico?
I don't have a question as much as I do a comment. You talked about the digital divide, and I've heard, can you expand upon that? What did Lee County do with regard to overcoming the digital divide as compared to school districts across the nation?
Well, the first thing we did is, initially when COVID began, we tried partnering with some of our local community organizations and some providers to help accelerate getting installation of home internet. There are programs for low-income home internet in the area, but we found that those were lacking. So what we ended up doing was we already had a relationship with T-Mobile, and they already had some incentive programs in place prior to COVID, and we took advantage of some of those incentive programs to bring in mobile hotspots for staff and students that didn't have reliable internet at home. And as we implemented that, we had the first phase back in the first devices arrived back in the spring, and then we had another batch that we brought in for the fall, because at first I think we were under the impression this was going to be a shorter term situation than it was, and then as we looked toward the future, we said we're going to need to bring in at least another year's worth of equipment. And then during this process already underway was the transition, the T-Mobile acquisition of Sprint. And during part of the regulatory approval process, T-Mobile had committed to the federal government that they were going to provide internet service for low-income families. And of course, this happened right before COVID. They really didn't have a rapid distribution model in place. So we said, okay, well, we want to participate in that, but it's not ready yet. So we're going to do our own thing for this first year. But then what we did is we said we want to put off that program as long as possible, because now we've already brought some in that we've paid for out of some of the incentive funds. And we're pushing off the grant program until May, so that as the ones that we were paying for out of pocket age out, these new devices, the new hotspots are coming in, and we're trying, again, maximize the amount of time that we can utilize the grant fund from T-Mobile as well as some of the other incentive funding, which means that for the next couple of years, we will see any gap between what's provided in the grant and what we need will be funded by the incentive funding, but then after that, what we have is we've minimized our operating costs for those devices going forward by utilizing the grant program fully.
So I think I've heard Mr. Davis say before that 1% of school districts across the nation were able to bridge the digital divide, and Lee County was amongst that 1%. Is that?
I can't speak to the percentage, but I can tell you that I sit on committees nationwide, and so far we are in much better position than I would say nearly all of the other districts that I've talked to outside of the state of Florida. I will say that some of our peers in the state of Florida were up there with us and working very hard. We're also, interestingly, the state that has the most people in school, yet we're further ahead on working on the digital divide. So not sure why that is, but I know that there was a lot of forethought between our partners, our partner districts in Florida.
And we're around 45, 47 in the nation for per pupil funding, but you were able to find the resources to do this. It was, that's one of the things I'm most proud of when I talk about the school district of Lee County being national leaders in terms of the pandemic and what we were able to provide to our students is your quick response, the relationships that Mr. Davis has built to allow us to negotiate and get our hands on those needed devices very quickly. I mean, you guys really put us in a position that the vast majority of school districts in this nation were not able to enjoy. It's hard to use the word enjoy when you're talking about a pandemic, but we were in a position, our students were in a position that many, many students weren't in because of your efforts. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gittens.
I just had, where did it go? You know, when I was teaching, we had the other whiteboards, the old ones. So at some point or another, a 5-minute, video or something showing us the Prometheans in use and how they are much more helpful than the ones that we had before would be good for me, and I think to share with the board. And I can't stop without saying thank you to Daryl and to Dawn. They were very instrumental in helping us get the Eastleigh Education Co-op going, and Dawn is our angel in helping us with that, and kudos to her, Dawn Revels. Absolutely. And she not only helps us with the technical piece, but she has very valuable input from the community aspect on some of the things that we discussed. So I just wanted to say that publicly. Thank you, Dawn, and thank you, Daryl.
Thank you. We can move to the next slide.
I'm Daryl Olin, Director of Application Services.
I don't think, to speak into that.
Is this better?
Yes, thank you.
Very good. So as you know, we've been working for a little while now on the Focus Student Information System migration. This project's multi-year, cross-functional, cross-division project to move our student information system off of our mainframe system to Focus, which is a web-hosted system. Mr. Davis and I briefed you on the project status at the end of phase 1, and at that point we had moved to online start of the year forms. We had implemented the Focus mobile app, and we had onboarded the charter schools. Since then, if you look at the column in the center, that's a small representation. It's not entirely all of the business units that we have. But since then, we have moved to take a look at gathering the district business processes regarding all of those areas. Take a look at things like reports, the data elements they use, how they use them, any letters that have to go out to parents or to students along those lines. So we've been doing that work, and that work continues now into phase 3. Primarily phase 3, what we're going to do is we're going to finalize those report creations, and we're going to go through the data, make sure we have validated the data, get everything migrated over, and then train our process owners, train our users, and then get set to, once we have all the training complete, get set to go live in the summer. So one of the things that, if you'll recall, when we had our initial discussion back in August of 2019, any project this size is it's full of changes, and changes are hard. So just understand that we're moving away from a system that is paper-based to a more of an online-based system, and that's going to include a lot of parent interactions. So one of the challenges that we're going to have is to make sure our parents are on board with creating their accounts and using this and getting familiar with it. Now, we have training, we'll have training videos, and we'll do that, but that is going to be a huge monumental change for the district compared to where we were. So in a nutshell, that's the Focus Project update, and happy to take any questions you may have.
But are the parents, aren't they already starting to use this?
They already have.
Right?
Some
Okay.
have. Some have. We have a ways to go, but some have definitely started. The Start of School forms is one, but we're moving to things like our student enrollment system. Pretty much everything is going to be primarily an online system. Obviously, we're taking into account for those that won't or can't create an account. We will see those as exceptions, and we will have policies in place for those. But again, we will be primarily an online system.
And why would they would not be able to create an account because of the fact that they may not have the computer or the ability to do that?
Part of that is going to be mitigated by the one-to-one, because now every student will have a device and they can do that on that device. But some of our folks that there may be a language barrier, or they just choose not to.
I see. Okay, thank you. Questions, please? Ms. Gittens?
My question was similar to that one. Many parents, even though the child has the Chromebook or whatever, basically will use their phone as their connecting device. So how easy is this program to use on a phone? Because sometimes if you have to input or if you have to check this or check that, it's not as easy on a cell phone.
Right.
Although they do have it. So how are we addressing that?
So it will be available to them, but you're spot on. It's not going to look identical, but we're doing everything we can to make it as close as we can to the actual online form, as you would see it in the device.
And I would add to that and say that it's a lot easier to use if you install the mobile app than if you try to use the web-based version on your phone. So on the phone, we do recommend that families use the mobile app instead of just try to get to it through the web browser on their phone.
And how easy is that if they have a simple, not T-Mobile, but a simple phone? Sometimes, how can you download apps on that? And then there's the idea they don't have as much bandwidth to do it, and on and on.
Yeah, if you, as far as the installation, if you can install Facebook, you can install our mobile app. It's literally that simple. Now, bandwidth, it's not a highly bandwidth intensive application at all. It's actually very, very minimal bandwidth. Very little data is used. In fact, you'll use less data using the app than you will using the web version, because you're not continuously reloading all of the screens, and it'll work more quickly that way as well.
And can I suggest then, when you're doing the training, that there be a portion that if you're using your phone, I don't know if you already do that, but to emphasize that, especially in certain demographics.
Yes, absolutely. And the schools, prior to COVID, the schools typically did parent nights where they would, have different, where they would have people available to assist with that. I know that COVID put a little bit of a monkey wrench in the works this year because we could not bring those crowds in, but hopefully as we get closer to normal, we will see that type of thing happen again. And the schools would typically accommodate multiple opportunities for people to come in, as well as provide assistance remotely for them to do that. And our goal is to get as many people into the online systems as humanly possible, because eventually, if you think about it this way, I know where my daughter's grades stand at any point, and that's the level of engagement we would love to see from our parents. And we know that for some of them, it has been a little bit of a challenge because either awareness that those are available, but we do maintain everything in multiple languages within the application. The language preference carries throughout. So I think a lot of it's just education and communication, getting that out to them, more than it is going to be a technical barrier, or because we do find that in our lower income areas that the vast majority of people still have smartphones.
They do have smartphones, and one last thing though, using of YouTube as opposed to the website or Facebook and all that is easier because they can get to it faster and quicker. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? No, and Mr. Eldon, I just want to say thank you for always making sure that we were on in the beginning of COVID, because if it wasn't for you telling us, I can't see you, I can't hear you, we would have been lost, so thank you for that.
My pleasure.
Appreciate
Thank you.
what you all do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. I believe that's the last of the presenters.
Yes, that's everyone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So seeing that that is the last of the presenters for that, then I'm going to suggest that we go ahead and move to the good of the order that we had postponed, or what we were moving up, not to hold anybody up. So if we will go ahead and do that, and Ms. Patrick, I know that you had wanted to bring that up. So
Yes.
did you have
May I proceed?
Yes, please.
So I had a one-on-one with Dr. Atkins and Attorney Williams, Attorney Dupree-Bruno, and Chief of Staff today, and I came across some troubling information, and I'd like to know how we as a board would like to proceed in light of receiving that information. I think I'd like to start by asking sort of a general question. I'd like to know what our expectations are of each other with regard to the receipt and dissemination of confidential or exempt information. And then secondary to that, in the event one of us fails to follow, the appropriate steps with regard to keeping confidential, exempt information confidential and exempt, what should we as a board do about that? So I think that sort of proposing this in a general way to guide us, not just through this, but through the future, will help clear my mind on it.
Thank you. And I know I was going to bring that up for the good of the order as well, so thank you for doing that. And I would actually like to ask Dr. Atkins, as far as, because the situation to me that I heard was should never have taken place, if at all it has, because you have to always assume that there's always two sides. And I would like to hear, Dr. Atkins, what your recommendation would be on this situation.
Madam Chair, before we do that, I do believe that Board Member Patrica had asked a question. So before we go to Dr. Atkins' recommendation, perhaps there could be a discussion on those two questions that she had raised.
Okay, so question one, Ms. Patrica, would be the first.
Can I, before we do that, can I ask you a question, please, Attorney Dupree-Bruno? Just in general, what kind of liability is the board exposed to when confidential or exempt information is shared? And can that liability be mitigated by the board taking action? Is the liability, there's a lot of questions, is the liability specific to the board member that acted outside the scope of her authority? And does that liability then extend to the full board if we become aware of it and fail to act?
Those are a lot of questions. There are a lot of questions with a lot of different answers because of the fact it depends on what we're specifically talking about. Of course, there is always liability for the board when there is a disclosure of exempt information. A lot of times this can come up during employment issues when there's an investigation. The statute's pretty clear about certain things being kept confidential when there is an employee investigation. This can come up when you have a regular litigation where there are issues that are being discussed. That's why in Chapter 286, which is the Sunshine Law, there are exceptions. That's why you're allowed to have a closed session. This can come up with regards to security issues. That's why there are exceptions in the Sunshine Law with regards to executive sessions to address those things. Obviously, there are ethical issues that can be raised pursuant to Chapter 112. There are contractual issues that can come up. There's exposure to the board with regards to employment law and having litigation based on discussions or things that are revealed either at the dais or by a board member or board members. There's just all kinds of things that can come up. Transparency and open government is extremely important. It's the #1 priority for us here at the board, and as
required by 286. However, the legislature did contemplate as well certain things that must be kept confidential. And those things would include, as I stated, discussions with regards to lawsuits, discussions with regards to employee investigations, and if the board does not abide by that, and a suit can be held for violation of that statute, and that exposes the board to damages. Usually we're talking about financial damages, and there are statutes that regulate those types of damages as well, but there is exposure. Can the board be sued on an individual basis? Absolutely. It just depends. There's some very loaded questions with lots of different answers.
Can I ask just one more? Does the disclosure of confidential information have to be purposeful, or could it occur through reckless behavior, a reckless failure to keep confidential information confidential?
Well, again, that depends on what we're talking about. If we're talking about an employee investigation, there is nothing that talks about willful or intent in the statute. It specifically just says that when there is an investigation, that this is to be kept confidential.
Okay, so I guess the question would be, or the conversation would be, based on what we were all told, and I believe everyone was part of that conversation this morning. Is that correct, Ms. Dupree Bruno?
So there was an individual board briefing, one-on-one, which is allowed per Sarasota Citizens case, which allows the board members to be able to speak to their staff. And there was a meeting this morning with all 7 board members, with the superintendent, Attorney Williams, myself, as well as the chief of staff.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted clarification on that. So based on what we all heard, how do we feel that we should proceed with this? I mean, do we think that it is acceptable? Because I know I'm looking at the statute 1.10112, and it clearly states that shall be confidential and exempt. We cannot do that. So anything that is, if there's an investigation, that to us, we have to keep to ourselves. It cannot be transmitted. It cannot be spoken about. It is confidential. And based on what we were told today, what is it that we would like to see of each other? I think that we really have to, I know we talk about this all the time, how we have to hold each other, well, we don't want to hold each other, we need to hold each other accountable, but we don't want to overstep ourselves with each other. We don't want to be watching over each other. But yet we need to make sure that we are abiding by what is ethical and what is the law. So, Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, I'm having difficulty seeing here on the policies. Did we not just recently, as part of a policy, say that board members would not, I'm trying to think of the word, not attack, but sanction each other? Is that the word we used? What policy was that? Because I'm thinking that, and this is not a reflection on agreement or disagreement, except to say, is this not a moot point considering what we already have in policy?
Board members do have a couple of policies to refer to. One of them is policy 1.28, which is the ethics and education policy, which does require that all covered individuals self-report, and that does include school board members in that policy. With regards to what can be done, there was a discussion when this policy was drafted in terms of, if that does not happen, what do we do? And the board was basically, it would go to the ethics commission, that the board was not going to police itself. So, and there's also board policy 1.05, which requires that the board conduct itself appropriately and ethically as well.
Okay, it's the one that you just mentioned, that the board was not going to police itself, and that if there was an issue, that it would be brought, like any individual on the board could send it to the Ethics Commission. And if I recall, it hasn't been very long ago that we adopted that. So I'm a little surprised that Ms. Patrica would bring up the idea of policing fellow board members when we just adopted this not very long ago.
1.05, is that what you just said?
1.28 is the Ethics and Education Policy.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Ms. Fisher, I know you just had your hand up.
2.8.
That was October 6th, actually, October 6th of 2020.
Yeah, not very long ago.
Ms. Fisher?
I'm going to wait.
Oh, okay. Ms. Gittens?
As Ms. Vaughn has said, we have been down this road before, and the board was, with our attorney at the time, we went through all of the legalities of it, and the legalities of sanctioning and investigating each other. And at the time, Ms. Patrica had an extreme appetite for doing so. We did vote on it as a board, and we decided, and it hasn't even, I don't think, been a year, that we would not be sanctioning each other. And based on the statutes and our policies, that if someone did, quote unquote, step out of line, it would be, anyone could report them to the Board of Ethics in Tallahassee with DOE. And the way the law read was that the only investigation of board members was to be by the governor or the attorney general. The way I see this situation, if something went wrong and someone did something wrong, then I think as the district does their investigation and does whatever it is they do, if it leads in some way to an individual, then that should be sent to Tallahassee. Like I said, we went around and around and around this about sanctioning and policing each other, and it was decided as a group we would not do that. And I find it very strange that here recently, things that we voted on and passed in the last year, I mean, I've only been here 2.5 years, and things we vote on and pass and decide as a board are all of a sudden coming back up for change. And that's disturbing to me, that, okay, some time has passed, so let's bring it up again and see, can we get a different outcome? That was the vote. That was the outcome. It was done with our attorneys at the time. And I don't see where we need to be sanctioning each other. If the district has something and they find something, then report it to DOE. That is the way the statute was told to us before.
I guess from what I'm hearing you say, Ms. Gittens, if the district, us, if we find something that we should send it. However, we do not want anyone investigating us because we're board members. So how does that, how do you get investigated if no one can be investigated upon?
But that's not what I was saying. What I was saying is this situation involves an employee. So the district has the responsibility to investigate things that have to do with employees, but not with board members. In their investigation of this employee, whatever that may bring, then if it leads to a certain thing, then they have to take steps and go to DOE. We should not even be involved in the investigation portion about an employee. And one of the discussion pieces was, what information do we get and why? And we get some things and not all of the investigations. So it becomes, which ones do we get? And I was told if it has to do with a child, well, we're in education, everything we do goes back to a child in some way.
So, Ms. Gittens, if I can just...
we're either going to get all of the investigations or not.
If I could just clarify just that part, because I do want to make sure that all board members are clear on that. There are going to be some investigations that are brought to the board's attention because it may be something that is in the news, it may be something that may be coming to the news, that it rises to that level, that we don't want the board members to be surprised, we don't want people knocking on your door, sending you emails, and you don't know what's going on. So that's why there are some that rises to the level, to the board, so that the board is fully apprised of what's going on.
And there are two recently that we were not apprised of that did reach the news before they reached us, which begs the question, is staff trained to know which things we need to be informed of and when? Is there a protocol for that? Because otherwise it's just a selection, subjective, let's tell them about this one.
Communications and the chief of staff handle that, and all I can tell you is that sometimes these are judgment calls. You anticipate that this may come up, so you're going to get the information, and sometimes there's no knowledge of it until it hits the news. So I'm pretty sure that everybody does the best that they can to apprise the board as quickly and as reasonably as possible.
Ms. Giovanelli, I think you had your hand.
Note that actually on the information that was provided was actually someone's name, and normally someone's name's never provided to us because it's really irrelevant. So I thought that was very interesting. I believe that it was probably really more like a setup or, an entrapment, because I don't believe that you normally should give anybody's name, and I questioned that from the immediate moment I saw that and sent an email out about that, because I was very concerned and alarmed over the fact that they would put someone's name in that text. So my concern is I had asked actually Attorney Bruno to regarding a legal opinion regarding board members being allowed information and facts pertaining to an ongoing investigation. And I think are you going to get clarity for that, or do you have that information?
With regards to board members being, so the statute is very clear that board members can have any information with regards to personnel issues, even when there is an investigation, okay? However, the statute is also very clear that information that is gathered during an investigation is to be kept confidential, and it is exempt from any public record disclosure.
From public record disclosure?
Any public disclosure. Period. It is, the statute's very clear that it is confidential information until such time as the investigation has concluded.
So when I was contacted this morning, I was asked if I want to have an outside investigation done. That wasn't discussed here yet. So I asked for the information and the facts of the situation to be comfortable, because I am not comfortable with the district and how the past investigations have been handled, and I feel like I need the evidence for me to make that decision. So at this moment, unless I can see the evidence that something occurred and not just someone's opinion or someone giving me information, Attorney Bruno has not seen the information, and therefore I can't make a decision on something without having the facts in front of me. And just because someone says so doesn't mean it's true. So there are two sides to it, and I expect that investigations are done for our employees, constituents, with the same level of commitment. And I don't see that. We have many complaints that come before us every day, all the time, and they're valid, and we don't do outside investigations, and we don't even investigate in-house. So we pick and choose what we want to investigate. So I think to investigate a board member in lieu of many other investigations, we didn't have an investigation on a watermark document that should have been investigated on that and why that occurred. So why would we investigate something that's a what if? Because that's the information that I got. It was what if.
Ms. Fisher, did you have something to say?
Yeah, okay,
Oh, sorry, Ms.
so
Morgan. I'll come
it
right
was
back.
my understanding during the meeting this morning that we were talking about a text that we received. Okay, since texts evaporate, I wasn't able to pull it back up. And I understand that the reason we're asking this question, because otherwise why would we, was that there is some fallout or some results of that text being shared that has created a situation that's potentially dangerous for another employee and/or students. Am I understanding that correctly? Yeah. So,
And without going into any other details.
right, without going into any other details. So, I think that the question I was asked was, did I think that we needed to do an outside investigation? And then I questioned what that meant. So it's my understanding that if there is a situation that needs to be attended to, it's incumbent upon this board to discuss it and to decide whether or not we wish to pass this on to an outside entity for investigation. Do I have that correct?
That was something that was discussed during the one-on-ones. I think the original question that was raised by Board Member Patrica was a little bit more general in terms of if these things happen, how do you want to proceed? And then we have the very specific issue with regards to this particular circumstance.
I'd like to remove my question from the table because it's obvious that people want to be more specific. So I'll just remove that from the discussion.
I couldn't hear why you removed it. I'm sorry.
May I finish?
Ms. Fisher?
Could you repeat?
Ms. Fisher still has the floor, and then we'll go back to Ms. Patrica.
Okay, I guess she interrupted.
Yes.
Fisher.
And so my next statement was going to be, I'd like to answer your question. I do not expect for us to investigate or sanction one another at all. I mean, that's just not our place. And so I expect for us to monitor ourselves and to sanction ourselves. Now, when we receive, then I'm going to ask another question. So when we receive information like that, is there some sort of disclaimer that should accompany that information saying, this is confidential information, just to remind board members?
So board members, I'm going to tell you right now, Florida statute 1012.31 is very specific, and it states any complaint and any material relating to the investigation of a complaint against an employee shall be confidential and exempt from the provisions of 119.07. So anything that you receive that deals with an employee investigation, a text, a document, a phone call, anything, is to remain confidential until that text message, until that investigation is closed.
And that's 112.31?
That's 1012.31 subsection 3A.
Ms. Fisher, you?
Thank you.
Okay, I wanted to, go ahead, Ms. Patrica, you had,
That's all right, I'll wait for everybody to
okay,
comment.
thank you. I'm going to ask Ms. Morgan, because she had her hand up. Thank you.
Yeah, well, even if we didn't know the statute, we know the statute. This board has been down this path in the last 2 years. Every one of us has been through this situation. We know from the prior situation exactly what our responsibility is and what the law says. So there is no question. We cannot provide information, and if we do, we are liable legally. Now, Attorney Dupree-Bruno said we can be liable individually or collectively. And so the question is, with respect to collective responsibility, how do we do this from a legal point of view? And I think what we need to do is we need to ask for an external investigation. We don't want internally people investigating the board, and we don't want to be in a position of sanctioning one another without information. The only way we're going to get information then is to go for an external investigation. And that essentially is what I believe that I discussed with staff this morning.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Ms. Giovanelli?
Well, when does, this is actually for Attorney Bruno, when does the actual start, when does the confidentiality actually start, at what moment in time? My understanding is when the investigation ensues. Am I correct?
As soon as the investigation has started, then the statute is applicable.
And is that when we're told, or when the person that's being investigated told?
I think as soon as the district has begun an investigation. It is not incumbent upon when the board member knows or when the person subject of the investigation knows. It is when the investigation actually begins, and that may be a time that is remote from when a board member is notified or when the subject of the investigation or witnesses are notified. As soon as professional standards says that we are starting an investigation, it applies.
Did that answer your question, Ms. Giovanelli?
Kind of.
Okay. Ms. Gittens?
Oh, okay, on that same vein, though, we as a district tend to very often like to throw around an investigation has been started. And I'm very much like the question Ms. Giovanelli just said, when is that? Is there a form? Is there something in writing? Is there some policy, or can someone just call someone and say, I'm starting an investigation, and from that point on, everybody is whatever. Now, not to negate, and yes, I agree with my, coworkers here, that we have gone around this, and I'm sure everyone is very crystal clear in the fact that we cannot share information. But my question is, two things. One, if we as a board would decide today to get a private investigator, are we not overstepping professional standards and completing their duty?
No.
Doing it? Are you saying that they can't find information and therefore we have to get an outside person to do it? Should we not allow them to complete whatever it is they're doing and go from there?
There's two different things, Ms. Gittens.
Are you going to respond to that?
Yes, there's two different things, Ms. Gittens. The one issue is with regards to board members, and the policy is very clear that the district does not have the authority to investigate board members, period. That's resolved. And it's my understanding that it was resolved prior to your policy. Now, what is going on with regards to the employee, that's something that's completely different and within the purview of the district.
So who is to say that one of us was, shared this? If it were you received it, the superintendent received it, you two are not under this investigation about the board situation. So it's someone's word against someone else. How do we know that you two didn't share?
Well, the board policy 5.311 does address that as well. Direct employees of the board, meaning the superintendent, the board attorney, or the board auditor, also may not be investigated by the district. If there is a concern about those three employees, an external firm must do and conduct that investigation.
But where is that concern that it was someone sitting up here?
Okay,
Who
so
is deciding that?
Okay.
May I finish?
Yes, please.
Okay, that's what I am asking. Someone somewhere has said, I think a board member or someone in this 9 did this. It is at this point hearsay. There is no proof unless you have technology or someone that can show us a report that says, on this day, so-and-so transferred it. Why would we want to spend the time, energy, and money and take away time from dealing with children to try to figure this out until, if they are holding information, then just go to the person and say, we're going to investigate you.
Right.
Okay, so the issue is they cannot come to us as board members because they're staff, so they cannot come to us as auditors. Second, there's only so many of us, 7, 8, 9, who actually received a text. So if someone else out there in the world has that same information that we all have, then how did they get that? It came from one of us. So
If
I need to see
we
that. That's all
don't
I
know
ask.
that,
I haven't seen it. Have you seen it? Because I'd like to know.
has technology
did I
shown
actually
us
see
a paper?
the actual text? No, I have not.
Me neither. So we're going to have an investigation on something we've not seen?
Okay.
That's my question. And I mean, my other issue is that why are we being even questioned on something without the facts and the evidence? I've asked for that. That's all.
Ms. Patrica?
I'm a little bit at a loss for words because I believe that our district is so much better than this. I believe that our employees, who we just saw earlier, have worked their tails off for our children and for our community, are better than this. And most important, our children, our students, are better than this. Our children, 2 of our children are being threatened as a result of the behavior of one of the people at this table.
Hearsay.
We're willing to turn a
Hearsay.
blind eye.
Let her speak as well.
We're willing to turn a blind eye and say, nope, you can't investigate me. I'm a board member. I'm different. Look at my phone. Look at my records. You can have any information you want about me. I have absolutely nothing to hide, and I would challenge every person at this table to do the same thing.
I agree. But who is saying that?
I'm sorry, Ms. Fisher?
So we received information from one party that indicated an employee investigation had been started. That tells me that other people were aware of that. So why is it automatic that one of the people who received that text were the ones who shared the information, and could it not have been someone else? So check the technology and go through our phones, and do we keep texts?
Ms. Dupree Bruno, no one can just go through our phones freely, correct? We can't.
Yeah, please do.
No, I understand what you're saying, but I'm not doing
But are
that.
those texts somewhere on record in perpetuity? Do we already, can all of our texts be checked?
So, right now, unless the board directs otherwise, the district does not have the authority to investigate board members. Now, if board members want to say, here's my phone, take a look at it, then that's within your purview to do so. But as it stands per the policy, the district does not have the authority.
Ms. Vaughn?
Okay, the district doesn't have the authority, and yet there have been 2 PRR requests by the Director of Professional Standards, and those requests are on those of us that sit here. We really, and again, yes, we do know what we can share or what we can't share, but HR also knows what the law is and the legal opinion that was given a year or more ago when we went down this rabbit hole with the watermarking. And we also, and I'm not going to bring that up, but we also had a member of the board at that time that gave information out to a community member. And we also had some things, I won't get into it, but that board member's own watermarked document that was released to NBC2. Because I discovered it.
I'm sorry, Ms. Vaughn, I want to try to stay focused on what we're speaking of right now, because the reason I'm asking that, please, is I want to discuss what, we're trying to figure out what needs to be done now, but yet we're bringing up the past. And
now what I'm bringing up is exactly what Ms. Morgan brought up. She brought up the fact that we should know. Well, we should know on all of these things. And yes, we have a great staff, but that does not leave out the fact that a member of the staff has, I guess, on his own, or maybe as an individual, decided to investigate us. At this point, yes, it's a terrible situation, but we have policy and we have statute.
Right, okay, and you're correct. So we do have the policy, and we're asking a person who is, that's his job, is to do, and not, you didn't even let me finish before you say, no, it's not. It's his job to do investigations. So if that investigation leads to something else or something more, they have to stop right there, because as you're all saying, well, why didn't he finish his investigation, which they cannot, because there's this wall that says we're up here and it doesn't matter. So I think that we have to take that into consideration as well. And then I know Mr. Bruno.
I would just caution the board that when we are discussing anything with regards to personnel matters, that really is within the purview of the superintendent. In addition, I want to be very, very careful, and this is why we have to be careful when discussing these things on the dais, because there may be some other things such as a whistleblower or other matters that may be impactful on these discussions and which could open the board up to additional liability. So my suggestion is with regards to any employee that not be discussed, that is within the purview of the superintendent.
Thank you. Ms. Gittens?
I do have to say this part, though, along with what Ms. Vaughn was saying. 2 times now, an employee has attempted to investigate the board members. And 2 times we have said...
I'm sorry, Ms. Gittens, is that what...
It is relevant to
Bruno
what
just told us not to do, correct?
So I'm going to...
Can I please finish my statement? I'm not going to incriminate. I am not going to say about cases. It's a general statement that twice we have been attempted to be investigated. And twice it has come out, and twice we have requested that the superintendent discipline or inform or train that employee.
So Ms. Gittens,
and this is just another one starting. I don't see how we can continue. Is it every year that we're going to be investigated on something?
So Ms. Gittens and board, I have to tell you this. You know, when I get my red flags and my legal spider web start going, and it's going now, we must be extremely careful on the board to discuss employee matters, because you don't know what else is out there. There may be, sometimes there's FMLA issues, there may be whistleblower issues, there's all kinds of matters that may be out there that you may step into and create a liability for the district. So it's my job to advise the board to be very careful in this discussion. I again recommend that we not discuss particular employees.
Okay, can I just make this one last statement? I did check with other districts, attorneys in those districts, and with FSBA. And the naming of names of people in an investigation that came to the board was something that should not have been done. So I'll just put that on the record. Thank you.
Ms. Patrica?
What I've heard up to this point is the board, the board, the board, the board, the board, the board. I've not heard about the children who are being threatened as a result of the actions of the board. And if we are going to focus on children, if children...
Point of order. You're saying as...
Ms. Gittens, please.
No, point of order.
Okay, Ms. Gittens.
She said as a result of children, of action of the board. We don't even know that. You are assuming.
Ms. Gittens,
Okay, Ms. Gittens, let her finish saying, please. Ms. Giovanelli, can you please allow Ms. Patrica to speak, as we will allow everyone else to speak. Thank you.
I am entitled to my opinion, and I am entitled to have a voice at this table. And it is my belief that this board should be investigated.
So,
Strong belief that this board should be investigated. And it's also my strong belief that if there's not agreement surrounding that, then we have something to hide.
Now, I'm sorry, Ms. DePree-Bruno?
I just want to caution the board as well in terms of, because we're talking about an investigation, that means we don't know all of the facts yet, and everything has not been laid out, and we don't know exactly what has happened. So I want to caution everybody in terms of putting facts out there that may or may not be solidified at this time, because there is an ongoing investigation.
And can I just clarify my statement?
Please.
The people at the table should be investigated, not just the board, but anybody that was on that text. The circumstances surrounding the release of this confidential information need to be investigated. The law does not permit staff to do that. We need to hire, unless somebody's willing to fess up, that would be the cheapest, most transparent way to go about doing this. Absent that, I believe we need to be investigated.
Ms. Giovanelli, I know you had something that you were...
Well, we need to look at the history of some of these investigations, and that have not had a great outcome because they haven't been investigated properly. And that is my concern. And I can start naming numerous investigations that the outcome was not correct. They were false allegations against whistleblowers, and I can go on. And you asked me not to name the people, so I'm not going to, but we've had several, and one's FMTC, one's the locksmith. We have coaches in the Cape. We've had a teacher that licked somebody's neck in East Lee. And those weren't properly investigated, and they resulted in an arrest later. I know there's law enforcement's involved in this situation. If you seem to know more, I say, and this is what I said this morning, and I'm going to say it here at the dais, why not wait for law enforcement to finish their investigation? And then we can proceed if there was anything ever even done wrong by this board.
Thank you. And I believe that we all received the same information because they were...
Well, now,
Ms. DePree-Bruno, everyone was here.
How do you know what everybody else received?
Well, I'm saying Ms. DePree-Bruno was in the meetings with everyone. That's why I asked her to verify that she was...
She can't discuss that with you as well, so...
No, but she can actually say who...
I don't even want to be talking about Sunshine that wasn't in Sunshine, so please, you need to stop that right now, because we're already in enough trouble with Sunshine. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Giovanelli. Any other comments, please? Ms. Vaughn?
Obviously, there were other people who knew about the start of the investigation. HR. Who do we don't know. We don't know what was said accidentally, what slipped out, what piece of paper or whatever might have, this, you want to talk about going against policy. You want to talk about playing the card that all of us that might be guilty are going against our children. I can't tell you how many investigations have to do with children. I can't tell you the number of important things where the board wasn't even willing, or certain members of the board weren't even willing to spend a dime on outside investigation. I agree with what several of my colleagues have said. Let's wait for, if police are involved, let them do their thing. If somebody here has proof that somebody on this board or somebody in HR or whoever sent that text to someone else illegally, show it. In the meantime, this is just, this is a ridiculous pursuit designed to undermine what is already shaky morale on this board.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Ms. Morgan?
The public's watching us. We are a board that talks about transparency. The most transparent thing we can do is assure the public that we are willing to be held accountable for our actions as individuals and as board members. And frankly, given the perception of this board, I do think it's incumbent on us to go ahead with an investigation. If they find nothing, what is accomplished? The community knows that this board acts in an ethical and responsible way, despite questions that have been raised about whether the board in fact acts that way. Let's do the investigation and let's establish that this board is a credible, transparent, ethically acting board.
Ms. Gittens.
Okay. Someone knows, because of technology, which one of the people sitting up here sent something out. So my question is, and I thank you for that, the fact the public is watching. I hope that they are. Because my question is, if there's 9 of us that possibly could have sent that out, plus we don't know who else in HR. So if an investigation is done, why wouldn't we just deal with the one person that you already know and save the taxpayer and the students, you talk about the students, and save the money and the time? A couple weeks ago, when we were talking about an investigation and we all decided not to do it because of the cost, it started at like $25,000 or something like that for the one situation we were discussing. If you know, just go ahead and say who the person is and save the taxpayer money of a witch hunt. We are dealing with children, yes, and I understand that there is an allegation that some children may be harmed or whatever. That's what professional standards is supposed to be investigating. If they're doing that in conjunction with police, let them do their investigation. Save taxpayer money after their investigation. If they know who it is, come up on the dais and put the, handcuffs on and take us out. But do not spend the time and energy. Do you know how costly that would be for all 9 of us, for someone to investigate all of the stuff that we are doing? And I think that it is unreasonable. I think it's spending money we don't need to spend. And if you know the facts, just say the facts and let's just be done with it. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Giovanelli.
So if we're going to start investigating complaints, let's start with all of them. Let's start with one that's got us in a lawsuit right now by one board member. Let's do that. Let's investigate that, because that to me is enough. I don't want to be involved in a lawsuit because of one board member. So let's start with that. So there's many investigations that we overlook. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Dupree, Bruno, do you have any comments? Well, I guess having this conversation, I personally will give anybody my phone. They can check whatever they need to check, and several of us said that we would do that, as far as just so that because I know I have nothing to be concerned about. And I'm not saying that any of us up here do have anything to be concerned about. But, and I did hear, about the police, letting the police and letting our staff do the investigation and see where the outcome comes for that. And then if something happens, then just bring it back. You would like for that to come back to us then, once they have determined what has taken place? Is that what the majority is saying?
No. I don't know. I think we need to put this to a consensus vote, because I'm not clear on where everybody stands.
Okay, so let's have a consensus vote on how many would like to have an outside, because I definitely think that if we did an investigation, it has to be from the outside, would like to have an outside, would not like to have an outside investigation take place.
That wasn't
which? I think the consensus is how many board members agree to having an external investigation with regards to this particular matter.
Okay. How many would like an external investigation on this particular matter? it would be by show of hands. I'd be okay with it. Ms. Giovanelli? No? And Ms. Fisher?
I need a clarification, I'm sorry, but an external investigation on this entire situation or on the fact that one of the 9 of us shared information?
One of the 9 shared information. That would include Dr. Atkins, possibly, allegedly, possibly, because that's why this is coming up, right? So the 9 would include Dr. Atkins, Board Member Morgan, Board Member Vaughn, Board Member Gittens, Chair Jordan, Board Member Fisher, Board Member Patrica, Board Member Giovanelli, and myself.
Right, okay. But in the event that the police and professional standards find some other thing, would we not have wasted money? I mean, I will voluntarily let anybody check my communications. And I believe, and I didn't get an answer to this question, do we have that capacity? Is our technology that sophisticated that our texts can be traced?
Yes.
And if so,
just say it.
I'm very willing to voluntarily say, do it.
All of your colleagues are not.
Ms. DePree-Bruno, can you?
I can't answer the question in terms of what we're capable of doing in terms of technology. I don't know the answer to that question.
Well, is there anyone?
Dr. Atkins?
Dr. Atkins,
is there anyone
on
that
your
could
staff
answer
who
that
knows
question?
the answer to that?
I don't see Mr. Alton here. I know Mr. Davis isn't, but we can get you a response.
Okay, thank you. So I guess in the meantime, go ahead, Ms. Vaughn.
When I received the phone call from Ms. DePree-Bruno, she said the district already knew who it was.
Right.
I was told, I don't know what the rest of you were told, but
No,
that
let me clarify.
the district already knew who it was, and all that she wanted was for one of us to fess up.
Let me clarify. It's not that the district already knew who it was. The district, and this was what my understanding was, the district already knew that the text message had been shared. So that's what I was trying to relay. If I didn't relay it properly, my apologies, but that's what it is. I don't know who it is, and I don't know if the district knows who it is.
We must have the capability because there's been a second public record request, and public record requests and the logs are public record.
Our public record, exactly.
And so there was a second request by the same district employee broadening the search terms. And so there must be some kind of, and I'm willing to show my phone to anybody.
Okay, so at this point, I want to, as far as the census is concerned, Ms. Fisher, you were the.
And my
you-
last
you're
question,
gonna
then,
hold on.
what would be the anticipated cost of that?
Okay.
I do not know.
Maybe we should table this until we get that information.
It would be 0 if the person fessed up.
Okay, so let's, okay, let's, if I may, let's bring it back, and I think that is a good idea for us to go ahead and just table it at this time, so we can get a little bit more information, and then bring it back for another conversation.
Can I have one clarification? 'Cause
Yes, please.
something Ms. Bruno said. You mentioned that the employee doesn't have to be notified that they're being investigated.
No, the employee does need to be notified. Anyone who's under investigation must be notified. The question was, when does the investigation begin in terms of when does the statute actually begin to apply? And that is as soon as the investigation begins, and that may be prior to the employee actually being notified. But the employee does need to be notified. Anyone who's under investigation must be notified.
So that's the same with us. We can't be investigated without being told from the superintendent. So, and I wasn't told we were being investigated. Were any of you told that you were being investigated?
Ms. Giovanelli, I am gonna, if I may, that is the reason why they had the one-on-ones today, is so that everybody could be informed of what what transpired.
Get clarification on that. I mean, if employee can't, if the employee has to be notified and we have to be notified, that's just, okay, I just want that clear. Okay.
Okay, so,
Can we put some time parameters, like
yes, so could,
today?
actually, Ms. Dupree Bruno, you?
I'm not sure, so I'm a little confused as to what,
Okay, so Ms. Fisher, okay, and several want an understanding of what would be a cost, number one, if we were to do something like this, and if there's something else that I missed, what would be the cost, and regarding the police, the involvement of the police, and making sure that they are able to get the information that they are needed. So I don't know if this would be maybe in a week's time, because that would give them.
We have to do it faster.
Well, I don't know how much time it would take for an investigation. An investigation that's a non-investigation.
so Miss Jordan, if I may, and Ms. Fisher, the problem is, in my experience, we need a consensus to know whether or not we should even move forward to look into this. And then once we look into it, a recommendation is made to, I would suggest that it goes through the board auditor to get a firm, and then that firm would come back and advise the board as to the cost. But if, I think we need direction as to whether or not the board even wants to move forward with an external investigation, and then from there we can take whatever steps are needed to get the cost, et cetera, because at this point, I don't know what the parameters of that investigation would be.
Okay. So we will go back to the original one as far as having an outside source. And we pretty much have, the only person we were waiting for would be Ms. Fisher then, as far as.
May I make a statement, please?
Yes, please.
Okay, I was told, and then I've heard today as well, that police are involved. Police do not get involved unless they are asked. So my question is, who asked the police to get involved before we were informed that we were being investigated? We're putting the cart before the horse, and if we were supposed to be informed, which we were told last year, and the superintendent said, in future, if anything like that comes up, you will be the first to know.
Dr.
So that would
Atkins,
mean before.
answer that question regarding the police, because I have the issue of, I'm not sure what can be spoken about and what cannot, and I don't want to speak out of turn.
Well, and I don't either, but I'm going to do my best to try to answer the question. So in the course of this investigation, I think that, again, it came to staff's attention that a witness and student, probably students, were being put at a safety risk or threatened. That there was consultation to the state and also law enforcement to guide the actions of staff. To try to, and so the criminal piece of this is what law enforcement, that's their charge. The second piece of this is, the part about the confidential information being put out there in the hands of somebody who potentially caused those events to happen. And, that's what we're trying to look into right now. That's why I made that request, because you got a public records request. Ms. Bruno came to me and said, staff can't do this. We didn't know that we were going to have a public records request. So the alternative, from my thinking was, this is something that has to stop. We can't have this type of action go on. And that's why I did what I felt was best, which was to bring it to the board, because I can't investigate, staff can't investigate, so I brought it to the board in these one-on-one meetings this morning. So, and even prior to that, let's back up, there was an attempt made by staff to notice the board attorney and the board attorney went and met with, or spoke to each one of you regarding the situation as soon as we became aware of it. And so, so not just one attempt here on staff's part, but two. One through the board attorney, and now this one in the one-on-ones today. So, trying to paint staff as not providing notice to you is incorrect.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to have, Ms. Giddens, you have one more question, then I'm going to call. And
Well, just based on what the superintendent just said, I was told in the meeting, and when I asked the question, when did this other situation occur, and I was told it was right after the document was shared or the text was shared. And this has been a week or so later, and we were not informed that all this is going on. And please do not try to paint me that I am going against staff and saying they're not doing their job. That's a tendency of this board to try to say what my intentions are.
Ms. Gittens, I'm sorry, no one's saying
No,
anything
you don't
for
need to answer me, please. I'm making a statement. Thank you. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so if we could please go back to the original. And Ms. Dupree-Bruno, could you please restate what you, because I know it was like lost in the trance.
Dr. Atkins made a recommendation for an external investigation to determine if and who, if that is the case, shared a text message between Dr. Atkins, Board Member Morgan, Board Member Vaughn, Board Member Gittens, Chair Jordan, Board Member Patrica, Board Member Giovanelli, and the school board attorney. So that's what we want to know, is whether or not the board would like to move forward with an external investigation to determine that. If the board gives consensus, then we will do what needs to be done to find out how much that will cost and come back to the board so the board can approve that expenditure.
Thank you. Based on what Ms. Dupree-Bruno just stated, can I please have a consensus on that? For and oppose.
For an investigation, correct?
So live with it, that means yes. So 4-3. So we would be doing that. And Ms. Fisher, you have a comment?
I have a question for Attorney Bruno. Can we, as a board, make a public records request and get the information without going ahead and notifying our board auditor to get somebody, an outside investigator, and save the taxpayers' money?
If the board wants to give me directive to do a public records request to ask for that information, I mean, I don't know if that information can be gathered through a public records request, but I don't know.
Well, wouldn't that be the
What kind of
most
information?
direct, quick, simple way to do it?
Well, that's what I've asked for. That's all I've asked for.
And me too.
Yeah, Ms.
I don't
Patrica?
have trust that this team will turn their records over. I think an outside investigation is necessary at this point. I believe that the public has issues with trust and transparency with this board. I personally have issues with trust and transparency with this board, and that's part of the reason why I'm asking for an investigation instead of a voluntary turnover of public records. Just in answer.
That doesn't make sense.
In answer to your question. A public records request would ask me to turn over my records. I would think that an investigation would have a more technological component to it, where you can search phones, you can search SIM cards, you can search, I don't know, but there's a way for an investigator to determine whether information was shared electronically that I don't have the ability to determine. And that's what I'm looking for.
And then based on the information that it would be needed, that should not take but a minute for them to do. So RSM, who is our auditor, would give us like a recommendation of who, I'm assuming they would give us a recommendation of the source to use. Ms. Gittens?
Ms. Patrica mentioned earlier that none of us seem to have an appetite to consider the student. And my question is, how will an investigation and spending taxpayer money of us to find out who sent the text, how is that going to protect a child? How does that stop it? And again, we still don't know if someone else gave that information out. And it's really coming down to the trust level of the board, of each other. That's what the situation is. And that's not what's on the table. Supposedly what's on the table is protecting a child. But if the information was already given out and the third party is doing whatever they're doing, how is finding that out at this point and spending money to do so going to protect that child? That's my question.
Ms. Morgan?
So, as I understand it, a consensus was taken. The decision is done. We need to stop this conversation, and we need to move on with the business of the board.
Then call point of order.
So,
I'm sorry?
Ms. Gittens,
Just call point of order and we'll move on. That's what I just said.
Thank you. Ms. Fisher, you have...
Yeah, I withdraw my, I can live with it. I would like to suggest that this board authorize Attorney Dupree Bruno to make a public records request, because staff can't do that, but we'll get the same information in no time. And I trust that every member of this board will open up their information. So we already are. It's public record. Anything we do or say or write is public record. So why can't we just take the path of least resistance and do that?
Well, with that, changing the vote, and I'm not sure, Ms. Dupree Bruno, because I know you're on that list as well, can you do that?
I was going to suggest that, we use outside counsel to do a public records request. That should not cost that much for an outside counsel to do a quick public records request. If this is the board's desire, to secure the cell phone records for that particular date or within those few days. And then from there, this can be brought forth to the board, and then you can make a decision as to whether or not you want to do anything else.
Okay, thank you. So based on that, because I know that she cannot really be part of it because her name is in that list, do we have an agreement or consensus on Ms. Dupree Bruno getting outside to do that?
So wait a minute, what just happened?
Okay, so what just happened was
I'm
Ms.
not following. What just happened to the other vote when Ms. Fisher withdrew her?
Okay, so Ms. Fisher just withdrew, so her withdrawing that, and she recommended that Ms.
But wait a minute, I'm not asking that. I'm asking what just happened to that other vote?
From her withdrawing that just canceled out the vote.
Yeah, the vote failed.
Yes,
Did it change it?
No, it canceled it out.
Failed.
It failed.
It died.
Because she just withdrew it, and then she put forward, she withdrew that, and then she put forward that she would like to see Ms. Dupree Bruno do a public records request. However, Ms. Dupree Bruno, because her name is also attached to this, could not do that, and recommended that we have an outside attorney do that, which would not cost so much.
To be clear, the vote where we were asked, do we approve it, and initially there were 3 thumbs down.
That is correct. It canceled.
So now
there are 4 thumbs down.
That's correct.
So that failed.
So then we're done with that.
We're done with that. And however, Ms. Fish,
I totally withdrew my vote.
you withdrew it, so so the vote is gone. But then you asked for
A public records request on behalf of the board. On behalf of the board.
On behalf of the board from Ms. Dupree Bruno, who cannot do that because she is also included.
She can do it on behalf of the board.
Yes, she could do it, have an outside source, but she herself cannot do it.
So for clarification, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, by Ms. Fisher withdrawing her vote, then that consensus failed, and there will not be an outside external investigation. Now, Ms. Fisher then brought up something else for the board's consideration, to have someone, originally it was me, but I'm going to be conflicted out, so to have an outside counsel do a public records request, and my suggestion was just for that time period of those few days of the actual cell phone records, which will be able to show any communication with other cell phones. That was my suggestion.
Okay. So, okay, Ms.
I have a question. Would that require us to turn over our phones and give somebody access to our phones so that I, for instance, couldn't say, oh, I don't want them to see that, so I'm not going to reveal that? Would this be an independent examination of my phone records?
So my suggestion was actually pulling the phone records directly, because you'll get the information from the phone records. I think that's going to come directly from our provider.
Right.
It's not going to be something that any board member can change any phone numbers or anything like that. It's going to come from the provider.
Ms. Jordan.
Okay, Ms. Gittens.
Superintendent, can you tell us when the date and at least that day when staff realized that someone of the 9 had shared this information?
I can get you that information. I don't have it in front of me.
Okay, and I am requesting, Mr. Pre-Bruno, when you do this request, that it only be for that period of time. And no, I am not trying to hide something. I just feel it's only necessary, time-wise and financially, just to ask for that record.
Okay, so
Another question.
Go ahead,
Would
Ms.
that include screenshots?
No, that will not include screenshot. I mean, this is just going to be like a regular cell phone record that you see, who you called and that kind of stuff.
So this isn't really going to reveal what I'm looking for, which is whether this information was shared with somebody outside the 9 of us.
Well, it should, I don't know how our records are with regards to T-Mobile. I have never seen, I haven't examined them to be able to tell if it's going to show me this text message from this time to this time. I know that it will show phone contact to phone contact. I'm not the right person to answer that question in terms of how detailed that bill will be, because I don't know.
Okay, so can I please, I know we've had much conversation on here. So could I get a consensus then to have Mr. Bruno, on behalf of the board, contact outside attorney for public records request then? Could I have a show of hands?
For a specific period of time.
For a specific period of time pertaining to this situation. Ms. Giovanelli? And Ms. Patrica?
I'm so incredibly disappointed with.
So, thank you. Ms. DePree-Bruno, would you please
And I have one other question, is if, while talking to outside counsel, and if there's another recommendation, may I have leeway to have him or her employ that other recommendation for that specific time period? Because I don't know. I know also that there may be an opportunity to download text messages. I mean, there's all kinds of things that can be done. So I just want to know what my parameters are if that record does not, reflect what is going to answer the question.
I believe yes. Ms. Gittens?
And not without coming back to the board. If you're going to expand the investigation, I think it needs to come back to the board.
I agree.
Okay. So if you would please, when you have this conversation, if there's something that needs to be further done or completed, bring it back to us for them to continue. Is that what everyone's wanting? Can I have a consensus on that?
Yes.
Say it again.
Okay. The question was, if, Mr. Bruno, could you please repeat what you just asked the question?
So my question is this: after speaking with outside counsel, if there's another recommendation, for example, there are times that text messages, the actual text messages can be downloaded. There are, again, I don't know exactly what the T-Mobile records will actually show in terms of phone-to-phone contact. So if there is something else that outside counsel feels would be beneficial for that short time period, may I have leeway to do that? That's what I was asking.
Thank you. Can I have consensus on?
I have a comment on that.
Ms. Vaughn.
We just defeated the idea of an external investigation. What I'm thinking is that what you're saying, Ms. Attorney Dupree-Bruno, is tantamount to an external investigation. Right?
Mm-hmm. And I think that that is based on Ms. Fisher changing the purview of what she would like to have been seen versus an outside investigation.
They're not connected.
And an attorney.
They're two separate consensus. They're not connected.
Correct. They're not. That's right. They're not connected. That's why there's a new one, and that was the new one. The first one was voided out. This is a whole new one that Ms. Fisher brought up. So that's what we're speaking on now, a totally different one. And Ms. Morgan, I know you had your hand up.
Well, I did, but I'm not quite sure where we are in this loop. I was just going to say that we have given Attorney Dupree-Bruno the authority to give a lawyer on the outside authority to deal with the telephone company about all of the communications that took place with respect to our district phones. So that's everything. That's what I heard, and that's what I support.
For a certain time period.
For a time certain, yes.
Ms. Giovanelli.
So
Trying to keep track of it.
the district has the information. I don't understand why they just don't get, I trust that if they give it to Attorney Bruno and she reviews it and the text thread or whatever, and I think it'll end right there. I would just rather see that happen. I mean, I don't understand. They have the information, so they must not know who it came from then. But I was under the impression they did. So that's where the confusion is. I think the information doesn't have to be call T-Mobile and have them print everything up. I think it's there. Somebody just read it and tell us, and at least tell her so we know how to proceed. I think we're shooting in the dark.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Giovanelli. Mr. Dupree-Bruno, could you elaborate on that? As far as your ability to do that?
Can I ask her a question to clarify that? And my question was to ask you, do we have the authority that if staff has the information, can we as the board direct staff to give us all information regarding this that is currently available?
So I will say, that's a question for, do you have the authority to direct Dr. Atkins to get that information? You do have that authority, but that will be, I don't know what, I'm not sure as to whether or not that, Dr. Atkins, if you can explain this, because I'm not sure what information they actually have on this particular issue.
Again, we do not have information in terms of who was the person on that text thread that communicated that out. We do have communication back from the person that it was likely communicated to, and the close proximity of time that would lead one to believe that shortly after that communication went out, this person was contacted, and then they immediately started contacting the parties that I've expressed concern about to you earlier today. And so therefore, it would point to the fact that based on that closeness and proximity of time, that communication went out right after that text to the individuals that started this whole chain of events.
Thank you. Okay,
All right, we still didn't get our question answered, though. Do we have the right to ask for whatever phone records and that type of thing for that period of time that staff has, that they have obviously shared with police?
I,
Again, those, what you're assuming has been shared with police in terms of records, that has not occurred. It's basically the information relative to what has happened to the individuals of which I expressed concern about earlier today, what they've experienced as a result of this communication that's been communicated to law enforcement.
Ms. Giovanelli?
So then, my recommendation is to let the investigation complete, as I think a board member said, and if it was affected by something that, by that thread of emails or text or whatever it was, that then at that point, then we can come back and have this conversation. I mean, what if, I don't know that it's been affected, and why not let law enforcement continue doing their job? If somebody is threatened, law enforcement's going to deal with that. And so I don't understand why we're getting involved with something, and then what are we going to do once, if that happened? I mean, so I think that we have to think about what we're talking about here. I don't think we're looking at the big picture.
Okay, well, right now, and I know there's so much conversation that's going on with this whole thing, we have charged Ms. Dupree Bruno to follow up and speak to an outside attorney, which that has already been approved through consensus of the board. So that's where we're at right now. So if you, Ms. Dupree Bruno, if you would please take care of what we spoke about in the time frame, giving you the rights to do that.
And just in response to what she just raised, I think what's important is that what has occurred here, I think, is extremely serious, and what I would hope to get out of this would it never, ever happen again. That communication of confidential information goes out, that is something that just should not occur. And so that's part of what I was asking us to do as a team, is to put a stop to it. And I think just telling people that has not been enough.
Oh, but you are still assuming.
Okay, Ms. Gittens, please just don't, unless you're called on, please don't just speak out. Thank you.
All right.
Because it's not fair
May
to
I
everyone
just
else.
answer him, please, quickly?
I'm sorry?
He is still assuming that someone up here did that. And there is absolutely no proof of that statement. So putting a stop, as you're saying, or disappointing Ms. Patrica because we won't come forward. And I have to say this, I was asked 3 times whether I did it. Straight up. Okay? And I want that on the record. So if you want to stop something, I would like this to all to stop. The assumptions and the assuming someone has done something is convicting before anything was even investigated. I said 20 minutes ago, let the investigation and the police finish their thing and then come back.
Well, just as you have, I think everybody has the right to speak, so we have to allow them to speak as well. So I just want to put that out there. But as far as it is right now, we've talked about this for over an hour. I know that we have decided as the board to entrust Mr. Dupree Bruno to move forward with what we've just requested. So if we can do that and then move on back to the agenda, that would be wonderful. And thank you for conversations. And Mr. Dupree Bruno, thank you.
I have to excuse myself.
Dr. Atkins, if we can, oh goodness, no, it's not you, it's Miss Cindy. Oh, I'm so sorry. Miss Cindy, before you come up, I'm going to give everybody just a 5-minute break. I apologize. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
I lose track of time.
If you all would like to pick up a flower, I can put it on the table inside.
We are back to the workshop, and it is the prioritizing workshop topics. That's our next thing on the agenda. And I'm trying to pull it up, so I apologize. And if you can see on the screen, we have ones that have been put on, which was equity and diversity workshop with speakers from FADSS conference. All of these ones that we have that are gray are the ones that we have to take a consensus on to determine if in fact the board wishes to have that as part of a workshop topic. So equity and diversity workshop with speakers, Ms. Gittens, I know that has your name to it.
Well, my question first off, before we begin, is I think I had asked at the last meeting to please add the date as to when it was requested. I think that's imperative to deciding, because if something is way, past its importance as to why it was asked, it kind of puts it further down the list. So I really think we need to see, and I've asked this before, to have the dates added to this list.
It's on,
No, it's not. It's on hers. It's not on ours.
oh, what she sent out, yeah.
This is the Google document that all of the board has access to, and it does have the date requested. There were some that we were not positive of the date, so we put the last date that we were sure that it had been requested. In regards to the specific one about the equity and diversity workshop, I know that it did come up a while back. My understanding was that after that workshop, Ms. Gittens had requested some information from the speaker, who I believe was Dr. Blackburn, and was going to share that with the other board members, and then would discuss that when it came back. So I'm not positive that information has been shared.
I'll correct you on that. No, I had received the information and I did share it. And then Ms. Patrica mentioned that we should talk about it then, because he had offered to do a shortened session with us to kind of see where we were at with all of this. And it was tabled or whatever and never gotten back to.
Yes, and that's why it is on here now, because I didn't know if that information had been shared, and when you mentioned it again, this on February 9th, it was brought up that it had not been added, so that's when we added it. So the job today is there consensus from the rest of the board to move forward with that workshop? And I know you were looking for some information. I know that you shared the information, and then there was some discussion about would there be a cost.
Well, this was right after the conference in December? And so, and immediately after was when I brought this up. So it's been 3 or 4 months. And I did share the information because people did ask about that.
I guess also I know the information was shared, and many of us had the opportunity to actually watch this because we were part of that. And I think also there was a cost. What was the cost involved in that too? We did not know what a cost was going to be.
I made the statement that he was willing to at least do a preliminary meeting with us to see where we were and where we might want to go in the future. And I said that in December. As I talked to him and I talked to his like chief of staff or whatever.
So based on him doing a preliminary one, then he would then assess what he believes is needed and come back with a cost of what it would be.
Yes.
Okay. So seeing that, is that something that, hearing what Ms. Gittens had said, and again, I know many of us had the opportunity to see this, plus the fact we do have our own equity and diversity that also offers us the opportunity to participate in their workshops. Is this something that would be interested, that you all would be interested in having them come here? And
it would be digital.
It would be digital. Would have them come to us via Zoom? Is that something that you all would want to participate in? Ms. Vaughn?
Oh, if it's If it's free and it's on Zoom.
If it's free. Okay, so consensus, we have that.
Thank you.
5-0.
So are you directing me to
So,
move forward
yes,
and try
Ms.
to set
Gittens,
it
would
up?
you please, because I know you have communications with them, would you please do that?
Thank you, I will.
No, thank you, appreciate that. And then just let us know. And then, actually, if you just let Cindy know, that way we can put it all together. Thank you, Ms. Gittens.
Thank you.
Okay, so then the next one was the interlocal agreements with Lee County, briefing on that, and that was Miss Morgan, and she has stepped out for a moment. So I'm trying to remember what all that was about. It's just to go over our the local agreements, and I think that most people were interested in doing that.
Yes.
And getting the information. So is that something that we would like the superintendent to have a briefing with us on?
Sorry. Has that been assigned to Ms. Morgan to be our
No,
liaison?
she's not the liaison. The only thing, Ms. Morgan's name is on here because she's the one who brought it up.
Briefing.
And the people whose name is on here, that's not the person that's in charge of it. That is the person who actually made mention of it and requested it, so that's why their name is on that. And Ms. Morgan, thank you for, we were just speaking about the interlocal, and did you have a comment to make for that, upon that request?
Well, I would say that it probably is more logical to have it as a briefing rather than a workshop item.
Yes.
Yes, okay, so we were just getting ready to do a consensus on that.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Okay, so is everybody in agreement with that? Okay, thank you, Cindy. 6-0. Okay, so Ms. Gittens, I know that you have on here the training on the computer application, and Courtney, I spoke with Joe about this when it first appeared on my phone. There is not a training for this. It's just something that's part of Outlook that.
Well, that was just one
pops up.
thing. No, I'm
can you
talking
please?
about some other, and I don't know. I could get with him to kind of narrow the list down of some of the things that we could do, and just kind of a workshop training, and you can do this, you can do that, and the basic type thing is all I'm asking.
Okay.
Not necessarily Cortona. Cortona is something just showed up. It was an app that.
Correct.
That is on there now, but we may want to use it. So, I'm not talking about, when we talked about calendars before, and I said all you have to do in a calendar item is to click private, and several people said they weren't aware of that. I mean, just simple little things that can help us work more, I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Vaughn?
Yeah, I was going to say, I would be happy to, I need to take some of these things, but I think it's an individual thing because we vary so much on what we know, our knowledge on these things. Aren't some of these things offered, gosh, now I can't remember that, we get the lists of the trainings that are basically for teachers, but aren't there?
Like PeopleSoft on the classes?
Yeah,
Yes.
the different classes. I think there's some trainings, would we not be eligible to do those trainings as well?
Absolutely.
You can go in any of them.
That's a little more in
Yeah,
depth than
that's-
what I was talking about, though.
Oh, okay, but I'm just thinking, I wouldn't want to do it as a whole board because some of us either may not be interested or already know it, or I think it's a good individual suggestion, though.
I will remove it.
Thank you, Ms. Gittens. Review of policies 5.28 and, I'm sorry?
Well, yeah. A general overview of policy 5, the ones that.
Oh, I'm sorry, could you speak, Ms. Fisher, could you? Thank you.
Okay. So, yes, I was requesting a review of the policies dealing with investigations.
Okay, can we get a consensus on having a review of policies 5.28 and 5.30, employee discipline process document?
Can we make sure, you mentioned discipline, can we make sure we have all even the ones that we discussed today earlier, to have those included?
Yeah, it's the process procedure, correct, Ms. Fisher?
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I forgot to look. Aren't these the ones we just did?
No, these are the ones that they were put on there? Oh,
Aren't these the policies that we just did?
I think so.
Yeah. So what is the need?
wait, Miss, I'm sorry. Let me verify. Ms. Dupree Bruno?
Can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
No. Nope.
Can we move on?
Mr. Bruno? You said, no, you said these are ones we have already done, so.
No, no, no.
Oh, there you go. There you
We did 5.331, which is the new whistleblower protection.
Right.
And we did 5.311, and we did 1.28. I have not reviewed or anything 5.28 or 5.30. That has not come before the board yet.
Thank you.
Okay. So I think it's good for us to review policies so that way we are kept abreast of what's going on, and it's good as a reminder as well to us. So can I get a consensus on that particular item? And then we can fill it in where we need to fill it in at.
Yes.
Slowly going away, so there's 5 of us now.
I have a question, though, with regards to this. This is to review the discipline process altogether, because there are other policies that fall within that. So I just want some guidance from the board as to what specifically you're instructing staff to do.
Thank you. Ms. Fisher?
Okay.
This was yours.
So I think we had a conversation about this, and I'll have to look later to find my memo about it. But some of these have not been updated according to the policies since 2016, and some recent situations that have come to my attention and the attention probably of other members of the board. I just think we need to make sure that we're up to speed and that we are in fact following those policies, complying with those policies.
Okay, so then with that explanation, then it looks like we'll be looking, I'll take a look and see whatever policies that are affected or that are part of that employee discipline process
Thank
that
you.
have not been reviewed in some time. So I'll look for all the policies.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So can we get a consensus on that then, please?
I think we did.
Oh, we did, 5. I apologize. I'm watching this move across. Okay, so then this was just mentioned, I believe, this morning. Bonfire demonstration. Is there a consensus that, and that was, Ms. Gittens had made that recommendation, that you all, did everybody else want to see a demonstration on how that is used? That's for procurement, correct? Is anybody interested in having a, and Dr. Atkins, I guess I'm going to ask you too, how,
It's on the last document.
how would that be, how would they be able to do?
It's just a program that they could sit there and show us 1, 2, 3. That's it.
Go ahead, Ms. Fisher.
Yeah, I thought that, I heard a statement said that, Bonfire was going to be converted to PeopleSoft?
No, that's the,
That's Manatee.
yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, yes, thank you.
So is there consensus on seeing a quick how-to-do, so that way if someone asks how we do this through procurement, we would have information on that? I don't care. What do you? Oh, okay, please. Maybe we can incorporate that in with something else that we're doing.
Yeah, and I know it's really hard just looking at these, but it would be, some of these are going to be like a 60-minute kind of thing. And well, that's what I was going to say. And other things might be a 15-minute
Correct.
thing. So, but it's difficult for us to,
It is.
I mean, yeah, to ahead of time figure out, oh, that's a 15-minute, oh, that's a 60.
Right, and so what they'll do is just look at, and you're correct in that as well.
Right, no, I know that. I'm just making the comment that some of these things can be, several.
Incorporated.
During a workshop.
Yeah.
And Madam Chair, if the board would agree, rather than prioritizing each of these in order of importance, if you would just allow staff to work to fit them in when people are available and when we can get them in, other than Ms. Gittens, if you can work with us, let us know when the one is available with Dr. Blackburn. Other than that, we'll just fit things in and try and guess the times as well as we can on those.
Yeah.
It's fine.
It's fine?
Yeah, I was a little late coming in, so I apologize for that. What did we say about the procedures manual? Because that's something I would like to have in hand, like now. We haven't had, we started going back over it a long time ago and didn't finish, and we don't even have, the updates yet of what we did, a couple of months ago?
Yes, I sent the most recent version to Attorney Dupree Bruno a few weeks ago, and we had scheduled it, and then it got moved because something else needed to come in, but we will work and get that on as soon as possible, because I agree, there's some additional things.
We really need to have our procedures in hand to look at.
Yes, and I believe the most
Because I know there was
updated
one
version
area
is with the
that we
attorney.
hadn't finished.
I'll be happy to go ahead and send you the most updated version, and the items that are in blue, you'll know have not been
that'll
agreed
be
upon.
great.
I can do that.
Thank you.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
it.
Thank you. So, and as you can see, also, we have dates where, I'm trying to look at two screens, where we have things already marked out for dates on when they will be discussed.
Yes, if you go to the second tab where it says tentative staff topics, you'll see it changes week to week. I update it every Friday for you, so if you go in on Friday, you can be sure that it's updated by the end of the day on Friday. The ones that are bolded have been confirmed. You'll see some things get marked through. This is definitely a working document. And then back on the board topics one, you'll see that some of the items have been grayed out, and that's because those have already occurred or there was no consensus upon them.
Great, yes. Okay, is there any other topics that you all think that should be put on this list? And remember, we can look at this, so it's available to us. Ms. Fisher, did you have any that you were thinking that could be added to this?
Not at this time, thank you.
Ms. Gittens?
I'm fine now.
Ms. Vaughn?
Not at this time.
Ms. Morgan?
No, thank you.
Okay. Then, thank you, Ms. McClung, for everything. And thank you for your patience, and I apologize for the delay.
Fine, I'm happy to be of service.
Okay, Dr. Atkins, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. At this point in the meeting, we can turn to the board agenda review. So I believe board members have questions. I believe Ms. Giovanelli had some questions that have been added, and we'll try to answer those as best we can along the way. I'm not sure if they're on your sheet or not. Anyway, let me go ahead and start.
Yes, please.
First is G, consent agenda, academic services, approval of the agreement with Kids Read Now Incorporated. And the question is, Kids Read Now, Troy, Ohio Summer Reading Program, contact to impact how many children, academic service involvement, question mark.
Thank you very much, Dr. Atkins and board. Kids Read Now is one of the initiatives we were going to implement last year as we continue to try to provide expanded learning opportunities for students. And of course, when the pandemic hit, we hit pause, but we are reinstituting it for this year. So Dr. Quisenberry is just going to share very briefly, and I know we've sent this information to the board before, but just briefly, who's the intended audience, and then just a little bit about Kids Read Now.
Thank you.
The intended audience is all of our second grade students. So we anticipate around 3,500 students will be enrolled into the program. So it's every second grade student in the district. The program initiates books mailed to the student's house. So the teachers work with the students in April to help them choose their books, because just because you're in second grade doesn't necessarily mean you're reading on a second grade level, correct? You could read higher or you could read lower. So the teachers will help the students based off of interest as well as level. They will choose 8 books that the students will then have mailed to their home to include resources for their families, comprehension questions, and different activities for them to do with the book. When the student finishes reading the book, Kids Read Now has a multiple of opportunities for them to report to the program that they have completed that book. They don't have to take a quiz or anything. They just take a screenshot of the QR code inside of the book and they text it, or you can call, or you can do it online. When the student completes reading all 8 of the books, the program sends them a little surprise in the mail. They do not have to do that piece to receive their next book, so they'll get a book every week. It's actually 9 weeks. The first 8 weeks is the book, and then the 9th one is a book that only has illustration and then has blank pages, because it gives the students the opportunity to write a short story to go with the illustration. It registers the students by their teacher, their school, and the district, and so on the district side, we're able to track the students, how many books they are reporting back. The teacher can track, and the schools can track as well.
And they get the books come in the mail by their name, correct?
Correct.
And they
It's
love
addressed to them, correct.
They love that.
I did ask, because I had some concerns with, well, what if they move over the summer, and the books are mailed back to the district office. So any books that are delivered back to the company, they will then send to us, and we will be able to deliver them to those students in the beginning of the school year.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just wanted to say I really love it, and I read the research from University of Wisconsin, and it's really been highly successful. So great. I think that's an awesome way of keeping the kids from losing that time over the summer. So thank you so much.
Thank you. We agree. I've actually had a few schools reach out to me and ask if they have additional funding. Are they able to add students? So can they do it for additional grade levels if they choose? And of course they can.
Awesome. That's great. Great. Thank you so much.
Other questions? All right. Thank you.
Okay, the next question is personnel recommendations, but actually the question is related to the finance department. So it says resignations, finance department, recent loss of talent. I think Dr. Desamores can provide a response to that question.
Good morning, members of the board. The question just really related to the loss of people in finance, I guess asking who we had recently lost. Am I understanding the question correctly?
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
That's your question?
Yes.
Okay, so in business services, we have an auditor position currently vacant in internal audit. The director of internal audit just left, and the director of procurement is also vacant. We also have been recently notified of a coordinator in budget who will be leaving shortly, and an analyst and an agent, both in procurement, that are leaving as well.
So I guess my question really is, how is this impacting your department's ability to complete all of the necessary work?
It's impacting it greatly. I mean, we are not a large division, and we really haven't grown, as far as the number of people are concerned in the past 10 years. So it impacts it greatly. There's a lot of stress and strain on people. At this point, we are pulling together all of our resources in the division to fill the gaps until we fill positions. So I'm serving right now as the role of the Director of Internal Audit. Susan Millay is filling in as the Procurement Director, and then all the other employees in those areas, and in some cases even outside of those areas, are filling gaps for the other vacant positions. So we're doing the best we can until we find the suitable replacements.
Right, so have we got those positions advertised at this time?
Yes, all except all except for the director positions of internal audit.
Okay. Well, thank you all for pulling together and once again, going above and beyond to keep the ball rolling. Thank you.
Ms. Vaughn, you have a question?
I was going to ask the same thing about advertisement.
That was your question, Ms. Morgan?
Yeah, so when Dr. Adkins told me about the most recent loss, I looked at him and I said, you grow talent and the risk you run is that you lose talent. And it's just really unfortunate. I think we're developing a reputation as a district that has strength in many levels of the organization, and that makes poaching attractive, particularly to smaller districts, giving people then an opportunity to grow externally. So, you know, I regret that you're in this situation, but I think it's also a compliment to you as a division head in terms of who you hire and how you train and develop staff. So, you know, kudos to you, and hopefully there will be people looking to jump into these positions because it's a well-run department in a school district that's doing a good job. So.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Doesn't feel so complimentary right now, but but I really do, of course, wish everyone well. Everyone has to do what's best for themselves, and we will miss the people who either have gone or are leaving terribly, because they are some really good people. But I'm also very grateful, to all the employees who are here, because there are people who are really pulling together to pull some things off until we can get some holes filled, and I'm appreciative of that.
So, thank you. Oh, sorry. Just one last comment. So a general statement, I hope that we take a closer look at our retention efforts and, try to find out, like, what else can we do to keep these people who we have drained, and also to take a closer look at our succession planning in all departments. I'm not just picking on finance, but.
Yes,
yeah.
no.
Yes.
I completely agree on both counts. And we do, try to do those exit interviews with everybody who's leaving to get some of that information of how we could potentially do a better job of retention for future. So I completely concur with that.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next item is in operations, K1, approval of the certificate of facilities data. Question is, where can we find the inventory data that is to be certified? Mr. Gemelli.
Good afternoon, everyone. So that data, that comes from the School Land Inventory Report. It's a summary of all the FISH reports in EFIS, the Educational Facility Information System. So the information that's in the attachment on that board agenda item came directly from that report. And in the past, we've never been requested to supply that report as backup, but we'll send that to you all today.
Oh, okay.
My question had to do with the
I'm sorry,
same
Ms.
thing.
Gittens. I wanted to make, Ms. Vaughn, did that answer that question for you?
Yeah, and I think the next one is actually pretty much the same, isn't it?
Include the actual up-to-date, most recent FISH report from DOE as documentation with this consent item.
And all I was asking was on the documentation for the consent item, just to provide the, the URL to go to the FISH report if we wanted to see, rather than just the totals that we see on there.
So the individual FISH reports, they're available on our website under employee, under support, district support.
Okay,
so there's a link
I
there.
Understand that. All I'm asking is that if you are looking at it, you take the URL and you put it as documentation, so that we can just click on it and go directly to it.
Sure, we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next item is K2, approval of the estimated expenditure for single source purchases from all digital technology. The question is technology, equipment, maintenance services, day-to-day repairs at that location, or materials used by maintenance services, question mark. Ms. Ebal is going to respond.
Good afternoon, Board.
Hi.
This question is mirrored in a later question. I want to preamble it by saying that these were both sole source agreements that deal with very specific very specific brands that are in our district. So at that, the maintenance of service for the 100,000 is for those repairs that are in schools that have the Bogan communication systems, and they have 3 brands, Multicom, Quantum, and Nyquist. They associate for 51% of the systems that we have in the district. This allows for the repairs, servicing, and upgrades that are attributable to age, lighting attacks, or other unforeseen circumstances that we need to maintain these systems. And the funds to be used are out of the maintenance service funds.
Oh, that's
Awesome, thank you.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes, thank you. That answered it, yes.
So the next question is, why is the replacement for this technology in two South Zone schools? Is this something unique to them only, or are we going to be replacing this technology in other schools as well?
The Pinewood and Three Oaks elementary schools were selected because of their facility needs and the conditions of their systems, specifically the wiring systems in these 2 schools are out of date, and the new system will be allow for those wiring systems to be brought up to date in a more effective manner and better able to be maintained. The current systems are underground.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item with a question was K4. This is for Mr. Lloyd. Approval of the piggyback Florida Department of Education. It's bus purchases and optional equipment. The first question is purchase of 53 buses for nearly $6 million in relation to anticipated proximity plan, question mark. And let me go ahead and I'll go ahead and go through these questions, and maybe you can, if you need me.
Go them off one at a time.
Okay, all right.
All
You wanna
right.
respond to that one then first.
The first one, I'll go, Ms. Fisher. No, we get $6 million budgeted to us every year, so this would be a purchase regardless of the proximity plan. So this was a planned long-term replacement goal that we've been working with Dr. Desmore and her department for a while.
So then, Mr. Lloyd, I wonder if another part of my question would be, do we anticipate that the proximity planning and keeping kids closer to their residences is going to decrease our need for buses?
Long-term, it will, because our routes are going to shorten, so the wear and tear on our buses will. And it's kind of a loaded question because grandfathering is going to become an issue, so you're looking long-term. But yes, in time, it should help us with that.
Okay, thank you so much.
So the next question is the purchase of 53 new buses, part of our rotation plan. How many buses will we retire in 21, 22? What is the average age, mileage on the beyond repair buses? And then next part of that is what will be the total number of buses in our fleet 21, 22?
All right. So yes, it is part of our replacement plan. We do have that. So we're going through. Right now, we are estimating 61 buses that we will be writing off this year. That number is kind of fluid, not greatly, but unfortunately, we had an accident on Wednesday of last week, I'm sure you saw, and that might be a bus that's totaled. So things come up throughout the year, so we shift them back and forth, go in that direction. We like to keep we're planning on keeping the number of our fleet at right around 912 buses. So as we bring buses in, we like to get the older buses out. I know there was a question there about the mileage on those buses and the age of those buses. Every one of those 61 buses meet the board policy. They're over 12 years old. They range from 1998 to 2008, and the mileage ranges from 250,000 to 329,000 on those buses. So we've got our wear and tear out of those buses.
Wow. Absolutely.
Next one, how many buses will this purchase? I guess that's the agenda item. It appears to be 53 total new buses. Is that correct? Please advise the distribution of buses with a breakdown of how many of each compound, to each compound they will be assigned. Basically, tell me where the buses are going and how many are going to west, south, and east zones.
Now, that is something I can give you on paper. We actually have a list of all our buses, according to the age of the buses and the mileage and the repairs on them. They're buses we put new motors in or new engines in that go through there. So we do have a master list, so I could provide you with that. As far as where they are going, I could give you that as well, because I know where all the buses are, but that might change for next year, depending on the needs of the zones, the needs of the kids. For instance, East Zone, we have 65 passenger ESE buses. Down here in the South Zone, to be honest, they're tough to get in and out of gated communities, so we don't have them. However, the needs of the kids, needs of the schools will change that. So whatever's sent to you guys tomorrow, the next day, could change by the time we get the buses. The vendors have 240 days. Do the math, it's eight months to get the buses to us. So we're not even looking at getting new buses probably till October or November.
So a couple additional questions.
Ms. Gittens had a question.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of piggybacking on Ms. Fisher's question about proximity. Have we projected, you said it will take a while. Have we, and maybe this is a question for whoever's doing proximity, but at what point are we looking at a return for doing proximity? Because the main thing was reducing the transportation debt. And I mean, have we kind of looked out into the future to see when that might be?
Well, I've been a part of that proximity committee from day one. So absolutely, that's going to help me from day one. It was kind of the running joke with the 4 options. I'm going to be happy with anyone that's chosen, because that helps us tremendously. So yes, we will see an impact right away. We will see our greatest impact when we finally get a pure grouping together. And like I said, we're still working on that as a group on the grandfathering, but that will have a profound effect. If you have a K-8 school and I'm a kindergarten student, that might be 7 years. And, you know, we always say, it doesn't matter if there's 15 kids at a bus stop or 1, I still have to send a bus out there.
Right.
So, yes, this definitely is in our best interest. We will see the greater impact down the road, but we'll see an immediate impact as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, a couple additional questions. Are all buses equipped with working GPS, and who's responsible for GPS tracking and monitoring?
Yes, all buses, they're actually ordered with the GPS. So when they show up onto our compounds, they are equipped and ready to go. As far as monitoring the GPS, it starts with me, goes to my senior administrators, down to my supervisors. So we're monitoring the GPS, but everybody in this district is using the GPS. I can tell you the parents use it because where's the bus app? That's data straight from our GPS. My dispatchers need it, my routers need it. Everybody uses it, but as far as the monitoring goes, that's the supervisors and administration.
I'm sorry, Ms. Vaughn.
Yeah,
Please.
when I asked this, I also had in mind that now and then we have reports of buses being where they shouldn't be, so to speak. So obviously, you know how many miles would be typical on a route. Is somebody dealing with that issue?
Yes, and that's what we're checking on. We have reports that GPS gives us those stats. If they've been idle for more than 10 minutes, where they're at. We actually have a planned route in the actual route. So yes, anything that comes across any of our desks through the email, phone calls, through the schools, a parent, we absolutely investigate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next question, I believe, is for Ms. Ebal. It's approval of the Piggyback Hernando County Public School District computers, related products, peripheral devices, equipment, software, interactive whiteboards. The question is technology, equipment, maintenance, services, day-to-day repairs, question mark, at that location, or materials, question mark, used by maintenance services, question mark.
So this is the second half of the question that was received earlier. In this case, we only need $10,000 because the contractor is Rowland Borg, and they only receive 15%. We only have 15% of their intercon systems in our facilities, so we don't need as much as we did for the other. Again, this is for repairs, servicing, and upgrades based on maintenance, lightning, other unforeseen demands.
I thought that would be the same answer. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Ebel.
And then next question, why is this lumped into one item? This seems vague. Don't we have separate contracts for these items, whiteboards and equipment, question mark? Please detail the equipment, intercom updates, and panic button project. Why aren't we looking into a system that could do both? Is this for Alyssa's law requirement? Is this just for 2 schools below? Why are we not putting this out to bid? 115K purchases what? Question mark. I don't recall being briefed on this and voting for any type of silent panic system. Where are we on being compliant by the 21-22 school year? This system should be for all schools, not just 2. Please explain why that is. What school is the 10K maintenance day-to-day going to be used? Why seems minimal? Why would this not go under a particular school's budget? Give me the budget item numbers. All these items are going to be paid under. Anticipated projects include, but are not limited to, $250K for Eastleigh County High intercom updates, $175K for Fort Myers High School intercom upgrades, $115K information technology services panic button project, and $10,000 maintenance service day-to-day projects. Okay.
The different types of projects were lumped under the Hernando County, and since we are piggybacking on it, we had to follow however they lumped the different projects together. This contract is not just for those 2 schools, but these 2 schools were selected for reconstruction based on need. Fort Myers High School and Eastleigh County High School were identified because the systems are older. They do not have serviceable parts, and the parts are no longer being manufactured. So if we are to repair the system, we have to get it done through special vendors. In response to the Alyssa's Law question, the panic button is being complete. The panic button project is being completed by the IS division based on the need to upgrade the facilities and ensure compatibility with the intercon systems. And whatever program or application is ultimately selected to be responsive to the new state requirement. Since the district has 4 different intercom manufacturers, an expedited amount was added to the different piggyback bids to ensure that there is enough expenditure to meet the needs of this vital safety project. If necessary, we can certainly work with our partners in the IS division to have additional information provided to you before tomorrow evening's meeting to help clarify that point, as well as provide any additional information about whiteboards and equipment.
Okay. I'm not sure whose question that was because I don't have that question, so.
Giovanelli's.
Oh, Ms. Giovanelli?
Yeah.
Okay. She's had to leave, but she's going to be watching for the answer.
Yeah, she's asked for us to attempt to answer her questions in this, and again, we can follow up if we need additional.
Okay, thank you.
Approval of the ranking, continuing contract professional services, architectural services, approval of the ranking, continuing contract professional services, roofing consultant services. And the question is, who does the scoring? I think Dr. Desimores is going to answer that for us.
Yes, for each of the RFQs that you see, there are a committee of people that do the scoring. In this particular case, it's a mix of people from that represent some are, a combination of different divisions: operations, business services, IT, or I'm sorry, information systems division, and academic services.
Ms. Gittens, you have a question?
Oh, I think Ms. Fisher, did you have?
No, I'm good.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
My question is it rotating, or is this something that people stay on there for a long period of time?
No, different people appear on the different evaluation committees. It really is a determination of availability, because there are many of them, as you know, as they come forward to you. Each of them probably are at least 2 meetings, and can be more than that, for several hours in a day. So who serves on those committees really depends on the availability of staff during that period of time. So we've got a whole, document going, people sign up, according to, when we're talking about the ones that fall under construction. Remember, we revamped those, so there's, a need to have at least 5 people serving, with a mix of different people, so that, one division or another doesn't necessarily dominate. So it is a struggle to make sure that we get all of the different people that we need on each of the committees, given availability and, how many things we have going on, but that's the process.
And then considering you're short-staffed as well, that is an increasing challenge, I can imagine. Thank you so much.
But okay, thank you.
Next question, include a list of proposed budgets.
Do you have another?
Ms. Morgan?
I was just going to make a comment. This, in fact, came up at the Construction Advisory Committee this week, or last week. And I was going to report on it at the, board member comment. But the members of the Construction Advisory Committee are really recommending that we no longer rank on the continuing contracts. They're going to make a formal recommendation to the Procurement Department, and then the Procurement Department may or may not bring that back to the board. And it is very labor intensive, and there is some question as to whether it's really necessary, because if you're qualified, you're qualified. So why do we need to rank? And so that whole conversation is taking place.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
We'll await your additional comments, and then we'll take it from there?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Desmores, I think the next one here, include a list of proposed and budgeted jobs for the contract during the first year of the contract. I don't know if you or Ms. Ebal is going to...
Yes, okay, yes. So at this point, we don't have a list of the proposed jobs for year 1, because now this is going into next year. So in the process of building next year's capital plan now, and when that process is complete, then we would be able to provide a more definitive list of the actual proposed jobs for what's going to happen for the next year. But we do have examples of the types of projects that would be included in those, and I think Ms. Ebal was going to come up and talk about that, if you want to talk about that.
So the different types of projects that might be included in the roofing consulting, those would be roofing design projects. On the architectural services, it's a bigger array of projects, from single point of entry or secure vestibules, portable layouts, minor configurations of classroom space or school facilities, changes to campuses to increase pre-K capacity or other capacity related items, cafeteria and kitchen redesigns, window replacements, PE pavilion upgrades, bathroom and or plumbing renovations, and electrical renovations. Those are all different kinds of projects that could be included under these contracts.
Ms. Gittens, that was yours. Do you have any other questions?
Yes, basically what I was saying is that, again, it goes to planning. And there must be some type of a annual plan that this one will happen here, this one will happen here, and that's all I was asking, was to have that as a part of the documentation.
Right, so depending on when that comes through, there'll be only a partial picture of that, because that plan that you're talking about is what we're building now for next year.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay, next question, approval of the temporary construction easement with Lee County Board of County Commissioners, Firehouse Lane and Corkscrew Road. Question is, explain how this will affect the proposed building of Estero K-8.
So this location's 2.5 miles from the proposed Estero K-8, so there would be no effect on that school.
And can you explain Can you explain a little bit about what this is?
Sure, it's a construction temporary easement for the harmonizing of Firehouse Lane to the Corkscrew Road expansion. Firehouse Lane happens to be our entrance to our bus ramp at Pinewoods Elementary.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, there was some non-agenda items that were also sent in.
Okay, I think we should be sticking to what's on our agenda. So if those can be,
One-on-one.
I'm sorry,
Are okay, we can include those in the update if you'd
we'll be
like.
fine, because we need to stick to the agenda. Please.
Anything burning?
I'm sorry?
Anything burning that someone needs to ask? I'm just checking. Just
Oh, yeah, for us. Does anyone have any questions that were not answered or were not asked?
Any of mine, I'll re-ask them in one-on-one.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
No, Dr. Atkins, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I'll just spin it. Sorry, head back. Okay, so we have completed all that. We've already have completed the good of the order. So saying that, it is 4:54 and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for being here and sticking it out with us today.